and unlicensed firearms and ammunition were discovered by the team. SASSA was prejudiced 38,150,000 rand. The suspects will face charges of corruption, possession of unlicensed firearm and ammunition when they appear in court.
The ANC in the Northern Cape has won the Ward 3 by-election at Nongwakazi Township in Dar, taking 79% of the votes cast. The EFF, which was the only party contesting yesterday's by-election, got 21% of the votes. The ward became vacant after an ANC councillor defected to the EFF and ran for the party in this by-election. Provincial IEC manager Alkin Topkin explains.
The ANC won yesterday's by-election in Mtanjeni. They received 79% of the votes compared to 92% which they received in 2021. The EFF, on the other hand, increased their support from 6% in 2021 to 21%. These were the only two parties that contested the by-election in Mtanjeni. The voter turnout during yesterday's by-election was also much higher compared to the election in 2021, from 53% in 2021 to 64% yesterday.
And lastly, Human Rights Watch says more than 220 civilians, including at least 56 children, were massacred by Burkina Faso's military in 2 villages on February 25th this year. The organization has termed the mass killings among the worst army abuse incidents in the country since 2015. Soldiers killed 44 people, including 20 children, in the Nordin village and 179 people, including 36 children, in the nearby Soro village, in what appears to be part of a widespread military campaign against civilians accused of collaborating with armed groups linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The report recommended that the Burkinabe authorities urgently undertake a thorough investigation into the massacres. Recapping the top story at 3, the start of the 33 million rand water project at Mahwelereng near Mokopane in Limpopo has been disrupted by suspected members of a construction mafia who allegedly shot one person and wounded another. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Niva Chipa.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Soizwapi and Sage return for Blitzbox in Singapore, and relegation threat heats up as the Cape Town Spurs take on Richards Bay, while not everyone is quite happy with the IPL's impact player rule. I'll have more details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Hello, your choice online.
Hi, I need you to help me make a choice.
Well, with Ford, you get to make your own choices. Like on a new Ford Ranger, Ford Puma, Ford Everest, and the Ford Tornado bus. There's a flexible deal for every budget at your nearest Ford dealership today. Limited time offer. Your Ford, your choice. T&Cs apply.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC 3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
It certainly is the National Pulse. Welcome to the show. And it is going to be a show that we are going to talk lots about because there's so many things that's coming out of it. Let me tell you now, Reverend Frank Chikane comes up in a few moments' time about the rebirth of the anti-apartheid movement. We're going to find out about that. Campuses in the USA, growing numbers of protests, all for the Palestinian cause. We'll talk about that too. We'll also talk about Thabo Mbeki and the fact that he, in fact, has been out campaigning today for the ANC. That hasn't happened, I think, in a long, long time. And being Thursday, as part of our election monitor feature, we speak to the leader of Build One SA, and that's Musi Maimane. So every reason for you to stay connected with us all throughout the show. Now, how do you connect? You connect by listening, which is absolutely great. You can also watch us because, this show is on streaming live, so you can watch us visually, which is great, but also on YouTube and audio streaming live via SAFM radio. Just go to the website, but also at the same time, you can also go to the... not just the website, you can also go onto SAFM on the X platform or Twitter, and you'll find the feed that comes through, right? So just many ways to connect. The hashtag to use, as always, the National Pulse. Glad that many of you listening have cottoned onto it and talking about, fingers of the pulse or having a feel for the pulse of the nation, and that's really what we're trying to do. Now, even ahead of the conversations, you may want to raise some issues and tell us what's your point of that. Just let me know. You can do that in a couple of ways by WhatsApp, in text or voice note, 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. You have that. And then we have to call in 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Now, first things first, we'll chat to the Reverend Frank Chikane, and I'm going to check if he's on the line. In fact, we're going to get to him right after this.
No. No. I've heard on the radio stations, they're not filling vacancies, there is no money.
No, but that's my question to you. If they don't have the money, will the doctor work for Mahala?
Give me a chance. I'm going to give you a reason.
No. I'm asking you. I need to challenge your position.
No. Nobody works for free.
Right now, the National Pulse is boiling over.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so first things first, let's talk about what I understand is now the rebirth of the anti-apartheid movement. So with me is Reverend Frank Chikane, who I have to tell you, I was at an event last night and I moderated part of that launch, so I certainly have a sense of what happened there. Reverend Chikane, appreciate your time. You're now very much on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon to your listeners here.
Thank you. Right. So let's talk about this. When we say a rebirth of the anti-apartheid movement, I mean, the obvious one is what has actually happened to the original anti-apartheid movement?
No, as you know, the anti-apartheid movement was established in the late 1950s to support the struggle for liberation in South Africa against apartheid. As you know, that the work of that organization became global. There's no struggle which had such a global movement to support one country in a struggle. And it also influenced the UN. The UN adopted resolutions against racism and apartheid, declared, apartheid a crime against humanity. But in 1994, we got our freedom. And there was also a special committee at the UN on apartheid. When we got our freedom, all that sort of packed up. But the movement in London changed its name and deals with other human rights issues at the present moment. But we thought when we were visiting Palestine, the Palestinians asked us, can you help us to establish or start up or bring to life an anti-apartheid movement, because what they are facing in Israel is indeed an apartheid system. Some call it a settler colonial apartheid system, from the sea to the river, as they call it. And so they felt South Africans are the people who will understand them better, and that they can assist in doing that. And that's why we then decided to set up a steering committee in South Africa to organize a conference of that nature, really to assist the Palestinians who are experiencing the same, going through the same experiences as us, even worse, actually.
All right, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the experiences in a second. I want to get the story right. So the anti-apartheid movement as we knew it, did that sort of die off then in 1994?
No, it didn't die off. It changed. I think it's called ACT or something like that.
Okay.
I haven't changed the name, but there's a new name. It changed because apartheid was gone as far as they were concerned, and it actually became an action group for human rights around the world.
Okay.
But the movement as we knew it, no, it doesn't exist as we knew
Okay.
it. Yeah.
So this grouping, this anti-apartheid movement rebirth, right? You're saying it's been set up based upon or premised on a call for the Palestinians to support them. Is it therefore restricted to the Palestinian cause, or is it beyond that? Considering the key word here is anti-apartheid.
Yeah, that's where it started. It is about the Palestinian cause, but the view is that there is apartheid manifesting itself in different forms in the world. And that if we have a new movement like this, we should be able to deal with any situation that we may be confronted with. When we interacted with the UN, the question was, that special committee on apartheid was for South Africa. So you can't resuscitate it. Because it was for South Africa, we said, well, set up a special committee on apartheid so that we deal with any experience of apartheid or any form of apartheid that raises its head in the world.
How?
Yeah.
So, in this case here, how then do you, and understand you head up the steering committee for what? The overall movement as well as the conference coming up, which we'll talk about next, okay? But how then do you intend using this rebirthed anti-apartheid movement to raise issues around countries that, according to you, would be committing acts of apartheid, hashtag Israel, but there can be others as well. So practically, what would you be doing?
Well, I think, the way that anti-apartheid movement worked really is to identify the injustices in those countries, the acts of racism, the discrimination against people, and in the main, it was actually subjecting the apartheid system to sanctions, boycotts, disinvestment, etc. So that was its major focus. Actually, it started not as a governmental issue. It was not focused on government. It was ordinary citizens who decided we're not going to buy oranges from South Africa, for instance, and it spread throughout Europe. And so it is citizens who take up the issues and then call for boycotts and, the sports boycott, for instance, cultural boycotts. And that's what happened with South Africa. Isolated until it actually ends.
Okay.
Its apartheid system. There are many things that can be done.
Let's take a step back then to your visits to that region, I think towards the end of last year. We don't have time to talk about it in detail, but specifically, what did you observe? And then you said there was specific requests for people like yourself to assist the Palestinians. So tell me about that.
Yeah, the initial visit in December last year was really because of the genocide in Gaza. So we went there to be with them. But the initial visit was May 2022. And in that visit, we went through East Jerusalem and various other areas up to Ramallah. And experience what people are experiencing. For instance, in East Jerusalem, we find people who were being threatened with evictions. They were removed and pushed out of the mainland that's now called Israel to East Jerusalem. And East Jerusalem was still part of Palestine and Jordan. And they've built houses there. Now they are being pushed to get out because somebody says, centuries ago, my ancestors used to be here. But the law they are using which is a Knesset law, allows the Jews to do that, to make that claim. But the Palestinians who were removed in 1948 can't go and claim their houses, which are still there, their properties, etc., because they are Palestinian. And for me, that proved beyond doubt that this is racism. And then, of course, their houses were being bulldozed. I went to a place where a house was being bulldozed. And people couldn't do anything about it.
All right. So you've seen many examples of that, right? Okay. Let's move on very quickly because we need to wrap up then. In terms of the movement, firstly, who are the people that are involved in the movement? And then lastly, we'll talk very quickly about your conference coming up on the 10th of May.
Yeah, no, let me just say we set up a steering committee when we came back of all the solidarity groups, any Palestinian solidarity group, the faith organizations, academics, and as you would know, that's how South Africa would operate. We opened it up to anybody who's prepared to do it. We then consulted, we had further consultations with Palestinians and agreed on a conference. And this conference is going to happen on the 10th to the 12th of May. We have invited people from every region of the world. I mean, it's only finances that are restricting us, but there are many people who would like to be part of this conference from Latin America, North America, Europe, Asia, Africa, north of us. And so we're expecting people who are former anti-apartheid veterans and those who are younger, who are concerned about what's happening in Israel, Palestine, and particularly what's happening in Gaza. And they will be here. I mean, we've got confirmations now.
Can you give me some names? Can you give me some names of people, speakers who are attending?
No, I can. I mean, I'm not having the program in front of me, but we've got a number of people like Barghouti, who's one of the leaders in Palestine, and a number of other people. I mean, Sinn Féin leader who's coming. There, I can give you the list. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, maybe we'll tweet it out. So Mustafa Barghouti, and you're saying a leader from Sinn Féin in Ireland, amongst many others. Well, okay, look forward to seeing what comes out of that. Just the last thing, what impact are you hoping to get out of the conference?
Now, firstly, there's going to be a declaration that says clearly this is an apartheid system and it must come to an end. And second, it will deal with issues that, for instance, like refugees who came out of that place are not allowed to return. Now, in terms of international law, once a war comes to an end, refugees are allowed to go back home. But in this case, they don't. So we'll deal with all those issues. But the key issue of the conference is to strategize about how together we can deal with this. And so all the delegates will go back home to go and this is a consultative process.
Okay, that's where we're going to. That's where we're going to leave it. I'm sure. Maybe just send your details of the conference with my producer. We'll publish it or announce it live on the air. Reverend Frank Chikane, chairperson of the South African Anti-Apartheid Steering Committee.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
The Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the Plant Health Phytosanitary Bill B14B21 on 25 April 2024 at Ngakamudiri Mulema District in Motswedi Community Hall in Motswedi, at Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District in Agricultural College in Potchefstroom, at Dr. Ruth Somotsi Mompati in Tosca Community Hall in Tosca, at Bojanala District in Safer Scale Community Hall in Safer Scale. All hearings start at 10.
SAFM.
Right, in the heart of South Africa's coal-rich province, that's in Mpumalanga, the Council for Geoscience Pioneers, the fight against climate change with the implementation of carbon capture, utilization and storage project, the CCUS technology captures carbon emissions at their source and securely stores them underground at carefully selected geological formations. I hope you got all of that. Now, this endeavor not only mitigates CO2 emissions, but also supports vital coal-dependent industries for South Africa's development near Leandra. The CGS has identified a site that will pilot this project as one of the developmental imperatives towards achieving the all-important low-carbon economy.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
If you've been following the news from a global perspective, you'll know there's been protests. There's been widespread protests, student-led protests, on the issue of that war, the battle Israel and Palestine, and in this case here, the protests mainly from supporters of the Palestinian cause, but it's to a level that I understand some campuses have even had to shut down. So it begs certain questions about the power that these students or these protesters have and the implications maybe going into an election year in the USA. Brooks Spector with us. He's the associate editor at the Daily Maverick. Brooks, it's been a while. Good chatting to you. Hi.
Welcome to have you come back on the air.
Well, yes. Thank you very much. Right, Brooks, what do you make? I mean, what's your understanding, firstly, of the lay of the land there? What's happened?
Well, I mean, let's begin by an understanding that this is these protests are substantial, but they are not, at least not so far, at the level of the protest that I would remember from anti-Vietnam War days, where there would be literally hundreds of thousands of people would gather at certain protests. There were occasional people who actually died in the protests, and we'll get to this in a second. It had an enormous impact on the Democratic Party's nominating convention in Chicago in 1968, where the protest ranged through the entire time of that particular convention and probably led to the almost inevitable defeat of then nominee Hubert Humphrey. These protests are taking place on a range of campuses. I think if my counting is right, if I had enough fingers, it's about 20 campuses so far. Most of the time, they have been gatherings of several hundred people. Some of them have been encampments on green spaces on the campuses with camping tents set up, and in some cases there have been other and more vociferous protests outside the campuses or near to it. One of the problems in trying to judge these protests is trying to understand how many of the people engaged in the protest are actually students at the university concerned, or have they come from other parts of the city to join in? And, of course, nobody really knows. In a couple of cases, there have been campus police checking student IDs and escorting people who quite clearly were not students back off the campus and so forth. And there have been some people arrested. I think the number, and I'm guessing here, let me go back to my numbers here. In one case in Boston near Emerson College, there have been about 100 people arrested. And I suspect that many of those people who have been arrested will be released, within a day, because the kind of charges that can be brought are fairly minor. But the political implications and repercussions could be substantial, because for the Democrats and for Joe Biden, the president and nominee for re-election, they point to the precariousness and the danger of his nomination with groups of people, especially younger people, whose support for or sympathy to Israel has been in sharp decline over the last, certainly the last 6 to 8 months, but gradually over the last several years. And if that's the case, many of those people will probably, they certainly aren't going to go vote for Donald Trump, but what they may well do is decide that they're going to simply sit home, not vote. And if they don't vote, then the thin margin of victory that Joe Biden would hope for becomes ever more precarious.
Which then gets me thinking, Brooks, that so. Is this likely to be an election issue? And you can answer this in one go. The second part of it is, it's not so much about the election. It's yet another example of civil society picking up a cause on university campuses, in the streets of cities, and effectively driving the cause because the leadership of a country is not doing that. And how significant is that?
Well, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that if you read the survey data about what is most important to people who are registered voters and who say they will be voting, it is in fact not foreign affairs, foreign policy issues at all. It's immigration, which kind of arguably is a foreign policy issue because it deals obviously with people coming into the U.S. mostly from the southern border, but not Mexicans for the most part anymore. It's immigration and the dreaded word inflation, cost of living. Those, at least at this moment, among the majority of voters, those appear to be the primary issues, the primary drivers. It's fairly rare for a foreign policy issue, even a particularly emotive one like this one, that takes pride of place among voters. But we can, if we narrow it down, and if we take our microscope and we look more carefully at the way voting takes place, among some people, a foreign policy issue, in this case, Israel, Palestine, Gaza, is enough probably to drive some of those voters to simply choose not to vote, not to support Joe Biden, who would ordinarily be the candidate they would likely prefer, and simply not vote or vote for one of the much more minor third, fourth, fifth party candidates if they choose to vote.
And perhaps as we I'm going to leave it at that, Brooks. My apology. Yeah. We're on to news time, but perhaps the issue to consider as we wrap up is these protests. Do they have the clout, if not today, but moving forward, to be able to change American, and I mean American specifically, public opinion with regards to Palestine and Israel? It's an ongoing issue, and those opinions have been divided for many, many years in that neck of the woods. Brooks Spector, thanks for your time. Associate Editor at the Daily Maverick. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Eva Cheaper.
Thanks, Ashraf. In your news making headlines for this hour, 9 people have been sentenced to a total of almost 11,000 years in prison for defrauding the Revenue Service between 2009 and 2016. The accused were charged on 391 counts, which include money laundering, fraud and forgery. In other news, the IEC says political parties in Parliament and provincial legislatures have received a total of 342 million rand in the 2022-23 financial year. And lastly, Namibian authorities have condemned tourists who posed naked at one of the country's top attractions, the Big Daddy Dune in the Namib Desert. Photos and a video have been circulating, sparking sharp reactions. I'll be back at 4 with more news. For SFM News, I'm Eva Cheaper.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Bedfordview has a crash before Giluli's interchange. All lanes are open, but traffic is still slow moving. Houghton Drive northbound in Parktown has delays towards Newton Street. Pomona Road in Kempton Park is where truck crashes reported. At the R21 highway, the road has been closed to road users. In Pretoria, the N14 northbound has delays towards the R101 interchange, and Atterbury Road is slow moving at El Station Drive. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The R620 is closed in the central Margate area due to storm damage. Bel Air Road has roadworks with traffic restrictions near Chief Albert Luthuli Hospital, and the M13 eastbound has roadworks with traffic restrictions at the N3 Paradise Valley interchange in Pinetown. In Cape Town, the M7 Jakes Hartwell Drive is closed between Morganstair Road and Westwood Drive. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. The N1 inbound has a crash reported just before Brighton Road exit. That's causing a delay. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the N7 southbound has a crash reported just before the N1 highway, causing delays. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Okay, Jimmy, what do we have today?
Well, we start things off with rugby. Dylan Sage and Siviwe Soizwabi are back in the Blitzbox setup for next weekend's Sevens tournament in Singapore. Sage will return to the Springbok Sevens team for the first time in 4 years, and Soizwabi for the first time in this season. Now, the inclusion of the two stalwarts is among 5 changes made to the squad that finished 6th in Hong Kong earlier this month. And still staying with rugby, Stormers loose forward Marcel Tennyson will earn his 50th cap for the Stormers when they face Leinster in round 15 of the URC at Cape Town Stadium on Saturday. He says that he's looking forward to helping his side claim victory.
I think it's a massive privilege, and I think it's an honor to play 50 Stormers games. I enjoyed it. I was here from the start, from under 19, under 21, so I came through the ranks, I'm sitting here and playing my 50th game. I think it's a proud moment for me and my family, so I think I'm going to go and enjoy it and give it my all and my best.
Moving on to football, Cape Town Spurs head coach Ernst Middendorp believes that the team's last hope in surviving automatic relegation will take centre stage when they play against Richards Bay tomorrow evening in the DSTV Premiership at the Athlone Stadium. Spurs are placed 16th and they face 4 defeats in a row. Meanwhile, the Natal Reach boys are now on 20 points, 8 above the Urban Warriors, who are rooted at the bottom of the league standings. Elsewhere, Borussia Dortmund are bracing themselves for the two most important matches of the season, with Saturday's game at RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga, followed by the Champions League semi-final first leg at home to Paris Saint-Germain on Wednesday. Now, with the league title already wrapped up by Bayer Leverkusen, attention has shifted to the battle to qualify for the European competitions this season. Dortmund's unexpected success in Europe has thrilled fans, but the team's future in the continent's top club competition beyond this term could rest a lot on the results against Leipzig. Dortmund are in 5th place on 57 points, with Leipzig 4th on 59 and 4 games left in the campaign. Then in cricket, the Indian Premier League's impact player rule has led to skyrocketing totals and quenched fans' thirst for runs, but unfortunately not everyone is happy with the change, especially the all-rounders in the popular T20 tournament. So it was introduced last season, and basically the rule allows teams to bring in a substitute at any time for a player in the starting 11. Teams have been using it to great effect in the current campaign, swapping out a bowler for a batter during a run chase and bringing up 200 plus totals frequently. Sunrisers Hyderabad used the rule to their advantage in a very different way against Royal Bengaluru earlier this month. Opener Travis Head smashed 102 of 41 balls as Sunrisers posted an IPL record of 287 for 3, which bettered their own mark of 277 for 3 earlier on in the season.
What do you understand by that? I'm trying to understand what are they saying?
Yeah, so basically they're allowing the teams to have a substitute anytime in time of play.
Like in other sports, like rugby or soccer.
And they can literally be introduced in the starting 11. So usually there's a starting 11, but they're able to bring in an extra player so that they can benefit.
At any time in the game?
Any time in the game.
So they're falling, if their runs are too little and they need another number 7 batsman to come in.
Yeah.
So then they'll reduce one, but then they sub the player. So once the player's out, he's out, right?
Yes. Once a player's
You
out,
like it?
it's out. I think it's interesting. It brings in a different angle to the T20. I mean, the T20 is already exciting as it is. But hey, listen, if they can use it to their advantage, why not? And then, rounding things up with women in sports, here's a name to remember, Nigerian-born Aniola Aluko. She's the first black woman to own a football club in Italy. Aluko is part of the ownership group of Mercury 13, which has acquired women's Serie A side FC Como. And if you're asking yourself, what is Mercury 13? Mercury 13 is an investment group inspired by 13 women who were denied the chance to go to the moon back in the 1960s. And their main aim is to raise $100 million, which could be used to invest in multiple women's teams around the world. And they're all about raising the value of women's football and teams. Anialo Aluko. If you didn't know her, now you know her.
All I know is the mercury is rising. That's it.
Well, that's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm doing Kapele.
SAFM. For 120 years, Rhodes University has shaped history. From Sir George Corey's pioneering 62 conversations capturing the early history of the Eastern Cape, to the first email to be sent in South Africa, and now leading the way in nanotechnology. Rhodes University is more than an educational institution. We are a legacy in motion. Be part of the evolving legacy. Rhodes University, where leaders learn.
The Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the Electricity Regulation Bill B23B23 on 24 April 2024 at Ngaka Mudiri Mulema District in Madibugo Community Hall in Madibugo, at Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District in Matlosane Auditorium Hall, at Dr. Ruth Somuti Mompati in Utlwanang Community Hall in Christiana, at Bojanala District in Letabile Community Hall in Letabile. All hearings start at 10.
Durban ladies trust they plan to control the 90 minutes against the University of the Western Cape. However, the students plan to demonstrate their intelligence through victory. KwaZulu-Natal confronts Western Cape. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Experience the queens of the beautiful game, Durban Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
We have an update on the Senzo Meyiwa trial coming up shortly, as well as an update on the issues around the new MK party. However, we've asked for comments, as we always do, on a range of issues on the show, and certainly people have commented. First of all, there's one around the election campaign.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you, Mafuta? Ashraf, I'm happy to hear that President Beki is campaigning for the ruling party, or is intending to campaign for the ruling party. It only shows that there's a lot at stake on these forthcoming elections. But that was not my point, Ashraf. It's unfortunate what we hear that is happening in Burkina Faso. Ashraf, the Burkinabs, I wish they should stand against any infiltration of that country, against any whatsoever of these so-called rebels or whatever. The Burkinabs should try and fight for their independence. The spirit of Sankara, Ashraf, should fight for the Burkinabs. It's self-rule, Ashraf, I think so.
Okay, so you're saying this. I mean, in fact, we've touched on the issue of the Burkina Faso before, but not for a while, and maybe need to take a closer look at that one there. But otherwise, Thabo Mbeki, you're happy with him. Okay, got that. Thank you. Let's get to another voice note on the Palestinian issue.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Pizzo here in Hartswater. Ashraf, after listening to Reverend Frank Chikanide, now I can really say Palestinians are very lucky nations. No, they are very lucky to be helped so much. No, they must just say thanks to South Africa. No, those guys, they are very lucky. I can't mention some of the things, but I just want to say they are lucky. I'm a South African. Thank you.
Well, there you are. They're very lucky. In fact, some may say they're very unlucky because they've just been the victims of a genocide. But they're very lucky with the support that they're getting, certainly from some countries in particular, as you've suggested, certainly the South African government. Got that point taken. Let's get to, I think there's another call I want to pick out from, in fact, we'll get the call just now. I just want to double check. In fact, we'll get the calls just now. Let's, however, talk about a developing story around, the MK party. Not a day goes by without something or the other happening around it. Now, lawyers representing the former President Jacob Zuma and the MK party have asked the Constitutional Court for an extension to file answering affidavits. That, of course, links to the view that the time afforded to the respondents is unreasonably short. Okay, so let's find out about the backstory to that with a legal practitioner, Impulelo Zikalala. Good chatting to you, and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Okay, what's the so there's been a request for an extension. What's the backstory to that?
You remember that the Electoral Court dealt with the matter a few weeks ago, and there was a decision that was issued, and the IEC was not happy about it and decided to take the matter on appeal. Now, they decided to do that even though they were not provided with certain reasons. I think they were so strongly about it to say, we will fight based on the papers that we have and submit the same or alter the arguments that you have stated earlier. But we just need finality on the questions that we have from the Apex Court, which is the Constitutional Court. After that was filed, then there's a directive that was issued by the Chief Justice a few weeks ago. He's allowed to do that in terms of Rule 12 of the Constitutional Court rules to say, well, there's an application which is in front of us. We are going to issue directives to you and say, you must file your answering affidavit on this particular date. Probably a reply is going to follow soon from the IEC. And then you can be able to deal with the matter. Either it's going to be dealt on paper or you'll get another invitation in which you are then able to come and argue. So that's where we are, waiting for the answering affidavit that needs to be filed by the former president and also the MK party.
Okay, so should we read anything into this request for a postponement, for an extension rather?
I think it's a reasonable request. If you're going to be asked within 48 hours to respond to a comprehensively drafted founding affidavit, you need time in order to go back and do all the things that you need to do. Remember that we are not dealing with idling legal practitioners. They may have certain matters that they need to do. They may be attending to trials that may take a bit of time in order to assemble the legal team that has been involved in this matter. So I think them asking for time is something which is reasonable. They are not the people that have instituted these proceedings. They are merely responding. Either you give them time so that you are able to get a much more comprehensive and detailed answering affidavit, or you run the risk of further affidavits being submitted at a later stage, supplementing the initial answering affidavit, and that would have a tendency of delaying this application. And you want to get it over and done within a short, reasonable amount of time, because you are scared of the 29th of May, that by the time that comes, at least everything must be done and dusted in terms of the list.
Well, I was just going to say that. I mean, how much of an issue would it impact the 29th of May if other issues are unresolved, like hanging in the air, in terms of how it will impact not election day only, but the impact beyond the election?
It's going to have a huge impact, because then there's this level of uncertainty which is there. So, for example, if the status quo remains, that means you are going to go to the elections with a list of going to the National Assembly that contains the name of an individual in which the IEC feels very strongly against. And if there are any other challenges which are going to be faced after that, then it's going to be look at what the judiciary ought to have come and played, their role should have come and played. However, they failed to do that due to them issuing directives later, not taking a decision or not issuing the reasons for the decision that has been taken. The IEC isn't a court that deals with urgent matters on a regular basis. I think they are formed in that particular manner. So they ought to have anticipated these type of matters are going to crop up and be able to provide the reasons as soon as possible. The same applies to the Constitutional Court, that once a person has been served or a case has been launched, all which are supposed to be done is that let the other party on terms and make sure that they're able to file an answering affidavit as soon as possible. Making them work under immense pressure is one of the things which are going to have a very bad impact in terms of the application of the rule of law.
Okay. Anything else you want to tell us in conclusion?
I think another thing, well, you can't think for the IEC. Maybe the thing should be to say, let's look at the harm that is going to be suffered by both parties. If the name of one individual included in the name of the National Assembly, what harm is that going to do compared to launching this application, probably getting your order late and having to change all the ballots that you might have printed or other things? It doesn't serve anyone, especially when it comes to matters. I wouldn't say they are trivial, but at the end of the day, it's a matter that has gone to be adjudicated. It was adjudicated and done. Maybe whatever decision they're going to take at this stage is going to be moot.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time and enlightening us on where we are with regarding these extensions. In Pumalelo, Zikalala, who's a legal practitioner. In fact, there's a couple of WhatsApp text messages. If the Pentagon is bombed in the USA, then the war will stop between Israel, Gaza, and Iran. The U.S. doesn't negotiate peace. They supply weapons for the poor people to slaughter one another, just like the Ukraine, from Brian Mabaye and Project Glenn. In fact, Brian, my thought, if the Pentagon is bombed, then the war won't stop. The war will start, if you get my point, okay? And there's another, Ashraf, the people of Palestine, Yemen, Western Sahara, and in fact all the oppressed people across the world needs this organization so that they can be free. And I was surprised to hear the UNHRC or the Amnesty International being surprised with the Burkina Faso issues, while they have done nothing to talk about the massacres of the Palestinians by the Zionist criminals, according to you in Tel Aviv. And I'm not too sure if you're saying that people haven't said anything about it. I think you're wrong, TG. I think, guys, you are giving Brooks Spector too much coverage to continue with the U.S. propaganda. What does that mean, too much coverage? Okay, hear your opinions, but if you're suggesting that the UNHRC and Amnesty have not spoken about the goings-on in Israel or Palestine, then I think you've got that wrong.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
Come test drive the new Ford Territory, the family SUV with a 1.8-litre EcoBoost engine that is both powerful and fuel efficient. Get yours at launch prices from only 590,000 Rand, including an optional service plan for a limited time only. Get to your nearest Ford dealer and test drive the new Ford Territory today. TNCs apply.
Mama Kiti, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons, so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
Lindelani ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but TS Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus TS Galaxy Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM leading the conversation. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
And do not forget, we'll be chatting to Musi Maimani as part of our election monitor feature coming up after 5 o'clock for about 30 minutes, or like a whole detailed conversation with him. And if there's a question you want to ask him, in fact, maybe drop me that thought right away. You can text us, which is probably the best thing to do. You can also voice note us, but text is probably better. You can also tweet it out. Just tag SFM Radio on the X platform. Tag me, Ashraf Garda. Use that hashtag, the National Pulse. Okay, calls is what we asked for. Calls is what we have. Moeen Khan is from Ladysmith. Hi, Moeen.
Hi, Ashraf.
Thank you.
Firstly, at the outset, congratulations to your producer and you for a very vibrant, entertaining and informative show.
Well, thank you. It's a complete team, as you've just alluded to. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, what's your point?
I was hoping to speak to your good reverend out there when he was speaking about the rebirth of the anti-apartheid movement, because some of us oldies have vivid recollections of the time, especially those of us who were abroad in London and Dublin. And I just wanted to find out a couple of questions to him, and then by the time I rang, he had left. But you can perhaps help me, because I'm sure you'll be involved in that conference, and you can guide me through my questions, please, because it pertains specifically to the rebirth of the anti-apartheid movement. I was very keen. Everybody, the world knows that we have an apartheid situation beyond doubt in subjugated, oppressed Palestine. What I wanted to know, at the time of our anti-apartheid movement, we had aligned with it the International University Exchange Fund that was supportive of the universities and education of the people of this country, and more pertinently with the way in Palestine, not just in Gaza, in the West Bank, with the universities, tertiary education, schools have been absolutely bombed, decimated. Surely that becomes a relevant question. Then also, I was very keen to know about Defense and Aid International, that was allied with the anti-apartheid movement to provide security, not just physically, monetarily, to families of the victims of the apartheid regime.
So, Moina, I'm going to leave you that, because we need to move to the next interview, but I hear you. I don't have the answers for you right now. In terms of that event, I'm not involved in it, but I may well report on it. You never know. I just don't know, right? Of course. Right. But we'll find out some answers from Reverend Frank Chikani, including contact numbers for people who wish to join and maybe know more about it. I think we need to do that. Absolutely. Moin Khan, thank you for that call, and thanks for that, for the words of support as well. In fact, let's talk about another issue that, as you know, is ongoing. That's the Senzo Mayiwa murder trial update. We should be connecting to Pearl Magubani, who's the SABC News reporter, who's covering that trial. And as always, developments take place. The state has now called Detective Ketumetsi Portia Mashele to the stand today. In fact, let's find out exactly what's come out of it. So, Pearl, as always, you're live on the National Pulse. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and to the listeners.
Thank you.
This morning, Mashele had a very brief testimony. Basically, she just came to confirm the chain of events with regards to the swabs. Now, she was responsible for getting buccal swabs, DNA swabs from accused number 2, Bongani Danzi, on the 16th of June 2020. And then we quickly moved on to Officer Martin, who is part of the Hawks team, and he was responsible for transporting accused number 1 during the pointing out process. Now, this pointing out happened on the 5th of June 2020, a few days after his arrest. It is being contested by the defense, disputing the fact that he went to the crime scene and to the hostel and pointed out the scenes to the police. They say that, he was tortured and, forced into signing the statements. And when those pictures were taken of him pointing to the house, like the Kumalo house, for instance, it was after the so-called assault.
It's such a complex story, isn't it? Anything else come out of that?
Yes, right now, just before we adjourned, the state has submitted bank details or records, per se, of the accused. It's all the four accused except for accused number 3. Now, the aim of them submitting this evidence is to, challenge their alibi, as we heard that 2 of them claimed to have been in KZN at the time, and now these bank transactions and withdrawals are supposed to be an exercise showing that they were in the vicinity or in Gauteng. We've had a few transactions being read in for accused number 1, Muzisbia, who had claimed that he was in KwaZulu-Natal during the murder, and just a few transactions then in 2014 that were done around the Vosloorus area. But his defense is also planning to challenge those records.
Okay, is there anything else you need to enlighten us on?
No, that's it. We are back tomorrow to just have copies of different bank accounts and all these accounts to be submitted into the record.
Okay, got that. Thank you for your time. As always, we will certainly connect with you tomorrow. Pearl Magubane, SABC News reporter, covering the Senzo Meyiwa trial. By the way, we'll chat to Lindiwe Mazibuko as well later on. Again, in the build-up to South Africa's election 2024, which, as you now know, is just slightly above a month away. And have you made up your mind? The other day we chatted about the type of family conversations you have about who's voting where. Do you have the same sort of conversations in the workplace, with your work colleagues? And in the conversations, does that represent argument as well in terms of who says what and one of you trying to sway the other? If you do, I'd like it if you can share it with us, okay? Just your opinions on that one. Here's a voice note around the former president.
Ashraf, can somebody honestly just come and admit that almost everybody underestimated President Jacob Zuma?
That's one question. I don't know. Well, maybe you're right, but I think the issue is not whether they've estimated him or underestimated him. I think the bigger issue is, does he... Well, what about him? Should he have a political career? Legally he may have a right or he may not have a right. But the point is, should he be still entering politics and leading a political party at this time of his life? That's really the big issue. Now, yes, I think other parties may underestimate him. Clearly he's got a following. I think there's no doubt about it. How big it is, we'll really only truly find out after the 29th of May. It's 4 o'clock now. Let's get the news with Eva Chipa.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories at 4. 9 sentenced for defrauding SARS, and water project disrupted in Limpopo by a construction mafia. Good afternoon, I'm Eva Chipa. 9 people have been sentenced to a total of almost 11,000 years in prison for defrauding the Revenue Service between 2009 and 2016. One of those sentenced received close to 3,000 years. The accused were charged on 391 counts, which includes money laundering, fraud and forgery. The Hawks say the accused submitted fraudulent VAT returns for and on behalf of companies and claimed undue VAT refunds from SARS. Hawks spokesperson Gata explains.
It is reported that during 2009 and 2016, the accused were members of various entities registered in terms of the Close Corporations and Companies Acts, and thus also registered their companies for value-added tax in terms of the South African Revenue Services Act. A total of 23 cases were opened at the Johannesburg Central Police Station against the accused for investigation. These cases were referred to the Gauteng-based Serious Commercial Crime Investigation for in-depth probe. The
IEC says political parties in Parliament and provincial legislatures have received a total of 342 million in the 2022-23 financial year. The IEC says this is a significant increase compared to the previous year, where the figure was a total of 1.6 million rand. Abongwe Kobokana reports.
According to the IEC, this increase has been distributed for the first time since the new Political Party Funding Act 2018 came into effect. The funding of political parties is provided each year through a parliamentary allocation. However, 4 political parties in parliament had their funds suspended due to non-compliance with the requirements of the Act. The Commission has also revealed that 21 new political parties were registered to contest the elections, and this brought the number of registered parties to 537, 322 of these for national. Abongwe Kobokane, SABC News at Parliament.
The start of the 33 million rand water project at Mahwelereng near Mokopane in Limpopo has been disrupted by suspected members of a construction mafia who allegedly shot dead one person and wounded another. They demand to be subcontracted to the project. The shooting happened during a community meeting to hand over the project to the community and the contractor. The pair were shot following a heated argument between locals and alleged members of the construction mafia.
The community members amongst themselves, they had some differences and altercations where one of them was so angry to an extent that he took a gun and shot 2 people. It's not for the first time we are experiencing this kind of situation, especially around Mahwelereng and the extensions. Even before you can hand over a project to the community, they are starting to fight amongst themselves.
In other news, MK Party members are arriving at the homestead of former President Jacob Zuma at Nkandla in northern KZN for an election event. It would be Zuma's first public appearance in about 2 weeks. He was not present when the Durban High Court dismissed an ANC application seeking to bar MK Party from using a logo similar to that of the disbanded military armed wing. MK Party Secretary General Sihle Ngubane says the launch of election trucks signals the intensification of the party's election campaign after winning court battles.
Today is a big day for MK. We are launching our biggest truck ever, the 30-ton, 12-meter branded truck for MK, which can take about 30 people on stage at the same time. And we are launching our 4 branded vans as well, which will roam around the country, because our focus now is campaign. We're done with these court cases and everything. We're coming here to launch this truck that will roam around the whole country and assist us in strengthening our campaign.
And lastly, looking further afield, Namibian authorities have condemned tourists who posed naked at one of the country's top attractions, the Big Daddy Dune in the Namib Desert. Photos and a video have been widely shared, sparking sharp reactions. The Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism has called the behavior extremely shocking in a statement cited by local media. It says that the public indecency is punishable by Namibian law, and the department and ministry has appealed to Namibians to report violations of park regulations immediately for swift action. Recapping the top story at 4, 9 people have been sentenced to a total of almost 11,000 years in prison for defrauding the Revenue Service between 2009 and 2016. The accused were charged with 391 counts, which includes money laundering, fraud and forgery. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Van Dijk names her first 15-member training squad since her appointment as the head coach of the national netball team, and Woods and McIlroy to receive loyalty payouts from PGA Tour. More details at 4:30.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Polokwane. SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N3 southbound in Lindbro Park has a crash near Marlborough Drive. The R21 northbound in Kempton Park has a crash near Pomona Road. Northumberland Avenue southbound has a crash at Apollo Road. Grosvenor Road eastbound has a crash at Bryanston Drive, and Pomona Road in Kempton Park has a truck crash reported at the R21 highway. The road has been closed off. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 northbound in Howick has a truck crash recovery underway near Lions River interchange, which means traffic is being stacked, causing serious delays. The N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has roadworks, the left lane closed between Town Hill and Hilton. In Cape Town, the N7 southbound has a crash before the N1 highway, causing delays. The N1 inbound has a crash before Brighton Road exit, and Jafta Kemasamola Road in Khayelitsha is closed between Tutu Avenue and Spiro Avenue. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Be part of the 17th Annual SA Sport Awards under the theme Celebrating 30 Years of Freedom Through Sporting Excellence, with great prizes to be won every week. All you have to do is SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020 to vote for your favorite People's Choice Nominee of the Year. SMS is charged at R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply. The nominees are A. Eben Etzebeth, B. Garda, C. Siamtanda Siya Kolisi, D. Pesitau, E. Kirsten Neuschafer. SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020. Voting line closes at 9 p.m. on the 5th of May 2024. T's and C's apply. For more information, visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the SA Sport Awards on Sunday, 5th of May on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 8 p.m. Proudly brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the SA Sport Awards. Hashtag #IsinjaZagame. Hashtag SASA 17th edition.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2 700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2 700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
Hi guys, your favorite mom vlogger here, talking all things family entertainment with Deal or No Deal now on SABC2 weekdays at 6:30 p.m. Umalume is trying to make it onto the show and have his life changed quick. Amanda Malume. Mama and I are the #1 Mubango fans at 9 p.m. all week because the storylines stay hot. And my two little people can't wait for May when Raid the Cage kicks off with SABC2. See La Familia, keeping those family bonds strong. Until next time.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
We've been getting some queries from people asking questions about how to contact this newly launched rebirth of the anti-apartheid movement or anti-apartheid steering committee led by Reverend Frank Chikane. As soon as we get those details, I will read them out on air, but I need to get it from them, okay? As soon as I get it, we will do that. Keep the calls coming, keep the comments coming on a range of issues as you connect in your own very way and you interpret whatever it is that is the National Pulse. I can tell you now that politics plays a huge role of what we talk about in the next hour or two, because politics, probably more than anything else, politics and service delivery, certainly impacts the National Pulse. So we'll chat to Lindiwe Mazibuko, not quite now, just now, around the build-up to the elections. And then after 5 o'clock, we've got Musi Maimani as our feature guest in the feature that we call the Election Monitor. So do not miss that. However, let's start with another politician. Is he retired? Is he not? I don't know. You tell me. We're talking about former President Thabo Mbeki. Now, you know that having been critical of President Zuma and then critical of President Ramaphosa, he's very much taken a back seat. That's Thabo Mbeki, taken a back seat in terms of his role within the politics of the ANC, right? But in fact, we're going to talk about just that because I understand he's on the election trail today. So with me is political analyst Prince Mashele. Prince, I appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thanks, Ashraf, for inviting me, and greetings to the listeners of the National Pulse.
Absolutely, much appreciated. Well, you said the president, former president, has got our pulses racing. There's no question about that. He said, in fact, a year ago, in August of last year, in fact, he was asked to comment about his role, in terms of activism within the ANC, and this is what he said.
Beginning of 2020, we met 350 leaders of the ANC in Durban. We're talking about the ANC. So I make a presentation about the ANC, what the ANC is, what it stands for, and all that. And later, a young fellow stands up and says, President, I do not know this ANC you are talking about. Because I joined a faction of the ANC. It's a faction recruited me, identified itself as a faction. That's the ANC I know. The ANC I know is an ANC organized in factions. This one you are talking about, I have never heard of it. This was illustrating a point that the ANC had accumulated within its ranks wrong people. Wearing ANC t-shirts, they know how to toy and to sing and dance and all that. But they are not ANC. So the 2017 conference, national conference of the ANC decided the ANC must renew itself, otherwise it will die. That was in December 2017. Nothing happened in terms of that renewal process, nothing. The last conference in 2022 repeats that message. The ANC must renew itself. Nothing has happened so far. But the ANC must renew itself. I say to the ANC comrades that when you say I must go campaigning next year, to say to people, vote ANC. How am I going to do that? To say, vote ANC. When I know very well that the branch of the ANC in this constituency is led by a criminal.
Okay, strong words, and you can interpret that the way you see it. But the bottom line, that time a year ago, former President Thabo Mbeki clearly not wanting to stand by side with any leadership of the ANC, but made the point a few times they needed to renew themselves, and they're not doing so. And if they don't, they will die. So, Prince Mashile, what do you make of that sound rap you played from in last year August?
Number one. I think that the former president, Thabo Mbeki, has not changed his mind with regard to the presence of criminals in the ANC. I watched him an hour or so ago in Soweto. When he was asked about the problems in the ANC, his answer was, yes, I'm aware there are problems, they will be solved. That was his answer. So he knows that the ANC hasn't changed. It's still full of criminals. And when I say criminals, I'm using his way. So he hasn't changed. So he is essentially saying to South Africans, vote these criminals into office. We are going to solve them once they are in office. That is an extremely dangerous message to send to a society. Unless if you are saying the criminals are now gone, now you can vote for the ANC. That's not what he's saying. He says they are still there, but vote for them.
Well, I think you're right there, because that's been the ANC line up to now. That, listen, we've had problems, we've had serious problems around infighting and corruption for the last decade or so. But give us a chance. We are going to revive this organization. We're going to weed out all the muck, for example, and we still then will be the best to lead. But he's in fact saying that. And then did he say they are led by a criminal or they are led by criminals, according to your understanding?
No, look, we know, by the way, you will recall, he was very vocal around Phala when dollars were found in a sofa belonging to President Cyril Ramaphosa. He was very vocal. In fact, he was angry with the ANC caucus in Parliament when it actually frustrated that investigation and eventually stopped it. He wanted that to go ahead. His conviction was that, in inverted commas, the president had committed crime. So in other words, one of the criminals that worry former President Mbeki is Cyril Ramaphosa. That's the top criminal, in inverted commas. So he believes that the entire party from the top to the bottom is infested with criminals. But those are the criminals that he says South Africans must vote for. And if actually you look at the list of the ANC, all the people who have been found on the wrong side of the law with regard to the Zondo Commission investigation are still there on the list of the ANC. And those are the people Mbeki is convincing South Africans to vote for. I think that is a fundamental contradiction. If you are sound as a South African, you would find that very difficult to understand.
So here's the million-dollar question. Then why is he campaigning for the ANC? The same ANC he's been critical of less than a year ago.
Here is my opinion. I think the man is old. He is trying to salvage and polish his image. He is trying to send a message that he is different from Jacob Zuma. Because remember, there is Jacob Zuma on the other side who has broken out of the party to form his own party. And there is a lot of focus on what does that mean in terms of the image of the former president of the ANC, the one former president of the ANC. He is now juxtaposing himself to say, look at the other one and look at me and make up your own mind. So he wants to appear to be holier than thou. This is, I think, the game that is playing. But that's just my opinion.
But why would he want to do that? What I'm trying to say, the stakes are, if he wants to be holier than thou, then maybe you should make a play for the ANC leadership. Yeah, he's campaigning, but I mean, he's still very much on the periphery. He's not going to be the main man. So the risks are high.
No. You see, Thabo Mbeki, as far as I see him, he is a man who is conscious of his place in history. And he knows, by the way, that he's enjoying his last years in life. I mean, we know he's a man of an advanced age. So he wants the last chapter of history to record him as someone who spent the rest of his life in the ANC. At heart, he is fundamentally an ANC man through and through. But he knows that the ANC has been hijacked. But he still wants to cling to the image of the ANC because that is the party that he has worked for the rest of his life.
Well, you see, here's the thought. Even if all that you've said in terms of your understanding is correct, then the ANC still has to allow him to campaign on their behalf. So then why are they giving him the space? What's in it for them?
If you look at the ANC that is allowing him, by the way, and it's fascinating, it's actually the ANC in Gauteng. That ANC in Gauteng, by the way, has always been aligned to him. They actually hero worship him. We know, for example, that he and Cyril Ramaphosa don't see eye to eye. They don't see eye to eye. He still holds the pamphlet with Ramaphosa's picture because of because that is aligned with his own personal strategy in the party. This is a man that I think is playing on a historic stage. That's what he's concerned about, especially given that he's now very old.
But I mean, the same can apply then to, and it's a different issue, but the same can apply to former President Jacob Zuma as well. So both of them, it's like an Ali Foreman, Ali Frazier rematch. They may not be competing against each other, but in fact, there are posturings that are taking place on the national stage.
Zuma, his agenda, by the way, he also hates Cyril Ramaphosa. And he hates Cyril Ramaphosa mainly because he thinks that Cyril Ramaphosa jailed him. So his interpretation of his imprisonment recently is that he was imprisoned by Cyril Ramaphosa. So he wants to punish Ramaphosa. He's on a personal mission. So how does he do so? He wants to make sure that the ANC under Ramaphosa loses power. And he would then emerge under MK to be part of those who are going to negotiate a deal to lead South Africa after the elections. That's the game that Zuma is playing.
So this is
has decided to play a different game.
Well, this is where my confusion. If Zuma's doing that because he, in your words, hates President Ramaphosa, then Thabo Mbeki, who also doesn't like Ramaphosa, in fact, is going to defend Ramaphosa against the man who hates Ramaphosa. Can you see why it's so confusing? Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
I am confused.
Will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University to attend the convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Merupa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor State of Campus Report, the President of Convocation Report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here, and the live concert happening with a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances.
Make some beautiful noise! On the lineup, Oscar Mbo, Oskido, Dala Tukzin, Makadzi, Lamise Hallworthy, Mtunzi, Luandrungulu, Umshaga, Amos, Naked DJ, and a special live performance by the internationally acclaimed Hoabili.
You can now secure your tickets from 300 Rand at computicket.co.za. Don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration. 27th April at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga. Hashtag MMA24. Black to the future. Metro FM. It's where you want to be.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
I'll tell you what, that conversation with Prince Mashele certainly got people's pulses racing. They have opinions. Here's another one. No, Ashraf, this Mashele is spreading lies and rumors, and how this guy can be allowed to continue with this nonsense. And this is not a political analyst, but a rumor mongerer. He can't be allowed to undermine President Mbeki and the ANC. And I think his utterances are political, and he must be careful and not mislead the people of this country from DG. In fact, that's not the only one. There's another one who still believes or cares about Prince Mashele and what he says after his embarrassing Mashaba book scandal. You remember that's one? Okay, that's a couple of opinions, but there's more, right? And here's another person saying, I disagree with Mashele.
Edwibala. I totally disagree with Prince Mashele there. Whatever that is saying, for me, doesn't make sense because all the veterans of the ANC were called by the ANC and they were spoken to. So surely they were convinced otherwise and they promised some other stuff or some things that things were going to be better. So they must just keep helping the movement. So that's how I feel about his change. Because remember, there's this other guy, the old one, who was leader of the veterans, whatever. So that's how I see it. So there's some disagreement with him.
Okay, another opinion. Keep those thoughts coming, and you can voice note us. You can call in if we get a chance to take it live, or you can WhatsApp, text us as well. So all those options are available to you. And you know the number, 0614 104 107, and then to call in 086 000 2032. You can also post on the SFM live feed on Facebook, as well as on the SFM radio live feed on the X Twitter platform. Right, let's talk about cannabis now. So the Labour Appeal Court has confirmed that the dismissal of an employee for testing positive for cannabis is automatically unfair and is discriminatory. So let's get the backstory to that with Nonhlanhla Mchali, the attorney and founder of the Legal Affair. Nonhlanhla, good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your listeners as well.
Thank you. Right. Give me a story as what's happened here.
Okay, so a former employee of Barlow World approached the Labour Court. She was challenging a decision. She approached the Labour Appeal Court, rather, challenging a decision of the Labour Court. And in essence, or in summary, really, she challenged her dismissal, saying that it was an unfair discrimination because she does or continues to use cannabis, and in the main she uses it because of her anxiety. So she uses it in addition to other prescribed medication that she makes usage of. And of course, the ruling moved from the Labour Court to the Labour Appeal Court. The outcome then from the Labour Appeal Court, like you highlighted, was that her dismissal was found automatically unfair. She received compensation for a period of 24 months. Very distinguished ruling, also a landmark case that we see. I must say, also very progressive from the Labour Appeal Court.
So you say distinguished, landmarked, unprecedented. Is it unprecedented? Has this not happened before, where a person has been dismissed and then that dismissal challenged in terms of South Africa's constitution?
Okay, a dismissal, no. We've got multiple cases that relate to dismissing employees. But what distinguishes this specific ruling is that it's a dismissal, and the basis of the dismissal is usage of cannabis. So what is standard for most companies or employers is that there is a prohibition on the usage of cannabis and also alcohol. But of course, I won't delve into the alcohol component, just focusing the usage on cannabis in the workplace. What makes this case really distinguished or stand out is that we already know in the South African context, we've got the legalization of cannabis for private usage, for one, and two, by adults. So it's not just condoning, inverted commas, the usage of cannabis. It's now the usage of cannabis for somebody who works. But of course, the context with this case is important, is that the Labour Appeal Court took note that she's not an employee who uses heavy equipment, dangerous equipment. She's rather an employee who is somebody who works from home. And two, also, there was no proof that was produced by the employer that just because she makes usage of cannabis, it doesn't mean she's able or unable, rather, to fulfill her employment duties and obligations.
Interesting one. So that means that, moving forward now, that means a person using cannabis for medicinal or recreational reasons outside the workplace is one thing, but now in the workplace they can't be challenged either, right? They would be safe in terms of
Not
employment.
Necessarily.
No?
I certainly wouldn't say that. So for her, she was able to provide substantial reasons as to why. There was an argument also on her end that there's a medical benefit that she makes usage of, and like I've highlighted, she's somebody who has anxiety, and her usage of cannabis is not just smoking, but she also makes usage of cannabis oil, and in addition to the medication that is prescribed by her doctor. So we have to acknowledge that it's not a condemnation or a blanket condemnation of the usage of cannabis. There has to be an understanding of context. In this specific case, we know that she's somebody who works from home. She doesn't make usage of heavy or dangerous equipment. There was also no proof from her employer that her usage of cannabis prohibits or inhibits her productivity and how much she can, if she can't attain specific targets or goals and so forth. So she's able to still be productive and to work. And I think that I wouldn't certainly advise that the view is that it's a blanket condemnation of the usage of cannabis. Context is very important. It might not necessarily apply to employees, all employees, rather specifically employees who are using heavy or dangerous equipment. They may not necessarily be able to successfully argue that they can make usage of cannabis in the workplace, which is positive for cannabis, and then not be discriminated.
Okay, I think points taken there. And I just think as we're talking, I get an impression a listener would be listening and sort of being nostalgic about some reggae music. I don't know why, I'm just saying it, okay? Now, Charlie, founder of the legal affair on that issue. So we'll chat to Lindiwe Mazibuko coming up, not quite now, in a few minutes' time. Looking forward to that. Let's, however, get the news headlines with Eva Chipa.
Thanks, Asha. For your news making headlines for this hour, the Nkomazi local municipality in Mpumalanga has been found guilty of contravening an environmental act. The municipality was taken to court by the Komiti Poort Despondent Residents Association for failing to fix spilling sewer systems. In other news, 9 people have been sentenced to a total of almost 11,000 years in prison for defrauding the revenue service between 2009 and 2016. One of those sentenced received close to 3,000 years. And lastly, Israel's war cabinet is meeting to discuss a possible major military operation in Rafah, south of Gaza, where more than 1 million displaced Palestinians are taking refuge. The Israeli government believes that several Hamas battalions remain in the town, along with many of the hostages still held by the group. Greg Host will be back at the top of the hour with the full news bulletin. For SFM News, good afternoon. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Lindbro Park has a crash near Marlborough. The N3 northbound has a crash at Buccleuch interchange. The R21 northbound in Kempton Park has a crash near Pomona Road. The N3 southbound in Germiston is slow moving towards Geldnys interchange, and Atterbury Road in Pretoria is slow moving at Alsatian Drive. In KZN, the N3 northbound in Howick has truck crash recovery underway near Lions River interchange, so traffic is stacked, causing heavy delays. The M4 has roadworks with traffic restrictions at Tongaat Beach, so expect delays. And the N3 has roadworks with major upgrade works between Spaghetti Junction and the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. In the Eastern Cape, on the R61, protest action reported at Mzamba in Cape Town. The M3 southbound is queuing towards Takai Road. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Marine Drive exit, and the M5 northbound is queuing towards the N1 Kubrick interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, to me, you have a big netball story.
Yep, newly appointed Spar Proteas head coach Jenny van Dijk recently revealed a 15-player squad featuring 6 players from the Telkom Netball League for the upcoming national training camp. And the Proteas have some time before they take to the court for the first time this year against Malawi in August, coinciding with Women's Month. Now, with the TNL officially kicking off this weekend, Van Dijk emphasized that opportunities remain open for any player aspiring to join the team in the future.
Yes, definitely, and it's a whole new phase for all of us, and we have so many new plans we want to execute. And I think one of the most important things for us is to, as national coaches, is to let every player out there know that yes, there has been a team of 15 that has been selected, but to us it's about performance, and obviously we need to be able to put up those performances week in, week out. And if there's any players out there putting up their hands and showing us that they can be consistent and that they deserve a spot, then there's always opportunity to be invited in as a training partner later and for us to see how you match up against.
Moving on to football, Morocco Swallows coach Musa Nyatama insists that they'll be targeting maximum points against TS Galaxy at the Lucas Muribe Masterpieces Stadium tomorrow night. That is at 7:30. The Dube Birds have found they're going very hard in the DStv Premiership since the end of November, winning just one of their last 14 matches. Financial difficulties saw them forfeit their last 2 games of 2023 against Mamelodi Sundowns and Golden Arrows, while Steve Rompela stepped down as head coach by mutual consent during the mid-season break. Now, the Rockets have emerged as potential contenders for a top 2 finish after an impressive start to 2024 as they collected 13 points out of a possible 21. Elsewhere, Barcelona coach Xavi Hernandez will remain at the club until at least the end of his contract in June 2025 after changing his mind that this will be his last season. The 44-year-old announced in January that he would step down as the boss, but with President Joan Laporta keen for him to remain, the The former Barcelona and Spain midfielder has performed a U-turn. In rugby, Dan du Plessis has recommitted his future to the Stormers after he put pen to paper on a contract extension. The 29-year-old has 64 Stormers caps and has never played for another team, having come through the ranks as an age group star who represented Western Province at under 16 and under 18 level before moving into the senior squad. In golf, Tiger Woods and Royal McIlroy are going to be smiling all the way to the bank because they're among the golfers expected to be given equity in PGA Tour Enterprises as a thank you for sticking with the tour instead of jumping to live golf. Woods will receive around 1.9 billion rand and McIlroy around 952 million rand stake in the newly formed enterprise for not taking lucrative offers from the Saudi-backed Live as merger negotiations between the two circuits continue to drag on. Now, the program will reward top-performing members and legends who helped build the modern PGA Tour. The initial round of players' equity grants will total around 17 billion rand and will be awarded to 193 PGA Tour members, with the majority of that going to the top 36 players as determined by the performance-based Formula rather. Then in the business of sports, Olympic champion, I don't know if you remember him, Michael Johnson, he's just secured more than 571 million rand from investors to start a track league that he's planning to launch next year. So basically his plan is to create content around these athletes and also to increase interest in the sport, which is one of the most popular at the Olympics every 4 years.
What do you, interesting about him, but on this golf story where they've rewarded them to stay with the PGA versus this growing sporting interest backed by Saudi Arabia?
Yeah,
any thoughts on that?
It's quite confusing because we heard about the merger and now they are awarding golfers that have stayed with PGA Tour. I don't know. It's quite interesting. I guess it's just paying them for their loyalty.
Well, it's paying them to hold on to them because the reality is if they lose them, Woods and Rory McIlroy, and they're losing absolutely big name players onto the other side. And the fact is, it's like what we've seen with Saudi Arabian football. And my thought on that is, I don't like Saudi Arabian football, but no football league in the world, and I'll say the same for golf, has a divine right, isn't it, to hold on to be like the superior league forever. That's just nonsense. So, listen, it's a war out there. It's a war of golf, and they want market share.
That's exactly what I'm saying. With them saying they're going to give the likes of Woods and McIlroy money, then it means that they perhaps not even thinking to swerve the way of the merger. With that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Dumin Kapele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Lindelani ladies are on a massive search for 3 points, but TS Galaxy ladies say they will travel back from eThekwini with a song of jubilance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the queens of the beautiful game, Lindelani Ladies FC versus TS Galaxy Ladies FC on Sunday, 28 April at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
For the first time in 30 years, the ANC is set to lose its majority. Opposition parties have united as the multi-party charter for South Africa.
A strong democratic alliance with a proven track record
Can anchor a new government that serves the people.
But a new government that works is only possible if you vote for it. Let's unite and rescue South Africa. Vote DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
What do you need to know about the elections, you as a voter, in terms of civic education? We're going to talk about that shortly. Lots of people commenting about Prince Mashele. I'll read out those texts and tweets as well and voice notes just now. But let's go to the markets now with Paswani Mpatlele, who's the senior portfolio manager at Makwe Fund Managers. As always, Paswani, good chatting to you.
Afternoon, Ashraf, and to all your listeners.
Thank you. And you have the half-yearly performance from Clicks, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, Clicks they came up with their half-yearly results ended at February 2024. The guys in their finances, we are looking at them continuing to show its ability to risk manage challenging market conditions we've been seeing and achieving good results across its business units. Whether we look at Clicks, the GNC business, the Body Shop, also Bay, they've recorded profits as per headline earnings per share up 13%, supported by customer loyalties and their ongoing strategy to expand their businesses. They've opened about over 900 stores now with 72 new pharmacies, and having to include, they've actually expanded the budget of 920 million they plan to spend on more growth opportunities. And the group sales turnover is up 9% to 21 billion rand, and further supported by sales coming from the beauty and sales care category. They've earned more market share, and Ashraf, even their private label goods continue to increase in demand, helping their margins to grow, income to grow by 14%, and the guys paid out a dividend up by 13.5% at 2.10 cents. The stock was up 1.5% on the news.
Okay, and then you have the local and global markets.
Yeah, local global markets, we are looking at a US GDP number that came out. It was more or less than expected. It only grew by 1.6. This follows as consumer spending was lower, along with non-residential fixed investment growing at a slower pace and having a wider trade deficit for the country, while price pressures continue to increase, causing yields to rise higher, as in expectation is that cuts will take longer to take place. Meanwhile, other additional pressures coming into the equity space was the fact that we've continue to see more disappointing earnings especially from the tech side coming from the US. The likes of Meta, they have shown that they're showing a weak revenue outlook going into Q2, and this will continue to put pressure. Only few areas of green we've seen is in the commodities that has a bullish outlook. We see a market where copper prices continue to rise on the demand of electrification increasing, and this has seen big companies now trying to do businesses deals. We're seeing the mining giant BHP have issued a bid to buy Anglo American, valuing the deal around 39 billion rand. And should the deal go through, this would see Anglo exiting South Africa. PHP, if successfully, they would get access to the copper assets, making it in control of 10% of the copper supply globally. And this copper is in strong demand, especially when you consider the energy transition and infrastructure growth. Overall, markets were not doing well today. US was down, with the Dow and the Nasdaq down 1.8%, S&P down 1.5%. Europe, the DAX and CAC were down 1.4%. FTSE was flat. Locally, the JSE was down 0.5%. Industrials put pressure, down 1.5%. Financials were flat, while our resource sector was up 1.3%. In the commodity space, we saw gold get a bit based on those GDP numbers being weaker at $2,318 an ounce. Platinum was down at $900 an ounce. Oil was down 0.3% at $87.64 a barrel. Meanwhile, in the rand space, we've seen the rand showing some sense of recovery there based on those corporate developments. The rand against the dollar was at 19.04, rand against the euro 20.37, rand against the pound 23.75.
Okay, that's it for today, right? Paswani? Yeah, I think that's it. Yes. Paswani Mpatlede, Senior Portfolio Manager at Makwe Fund Managers, right? In fact, there's a few people who are commenting about Prince Mashele, understandably, even on the Twitter or X platform. Mandla Mpempe saying, "Good afternoon. I totally disagree with Prince Mashele on his take about the role of Thabo Mbeki on the campaign trail of the ANC. He presents his analysis as though Mbeki is a consultant to the ANC. The man, Mbeki, is a member of the ANC, and in this case, the prince is wrong." And there's another one from Gobanga saying, "Ashraf, is Mashele a political analyst or just a listener saying his opinion?" Okay, well, there you are. There is, and you know what? The show is called The National Pulse. Anything that gets your pulses racing and your blood boiling and gets you to be thought-provoked about different issues is exactly what we cover, and clearly we've done just that. Well, I'll tell you what, in the build-up to the elections, we have another take on the daily election watch with Lindiwe Mazibuko in a moment.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Right, so yes, we have just about a month and a bit to go. There are many organizations, I think, playing a critical role in not just voter education, but voter awareness and getting us to understand exactly the complexities of the election. Although at its core, it may be very simple. Just vote, isn't it? But Lindiwe Mazibuko is one of them. She's the co-founder and the CEO of Future Elect, right? Lindiwe, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. You're live on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, you've got this big responsibility of providing what? Let's start with civic education. I mean, what can you tell us around that in the build-up to the election?
So, if we think back to the number of times we complain as South Africans about the quality of politicians we get, we have to ask ourselves what role we play as citizens in getting them elected into office. And our belief at Future Elect is if you want great leaders, you have to have informed citizens. So we've built a whole program of civic education in South Africa to support particularly young people who are voting for the first time, who are coming of voting age for the first time in this election and in subsequent elections, to have enough information about who they're electing, what they're electing them to do, where these people will serve, what responsibilities they'll have, and how you can hold them accountable. That's the importance of civic education. It's not just enough to vote every 5 years. We have to rethink what it means to be a South African citizen and what it means to do the work in order to ensure that we get the outcomes we deserve from our government.
And do I take it what you're then saying is vote and then hold those that you've voted to serve you and not to lead you, hold them accountable in that interim period?
Absolutely. And look, as we become more interesting democratically in terms of coalition governments and, government switching from political party to political party, voters become more powerful. This is the moment for voters to seize their power, again, not only at the ballot box, by deciding who gets to govern, but also in between elections by observing, holding accountable, critiquing, intervening. There are so many public participation tools that are available to us as voters and citizens in this country. But the challenge is we don't have civic education of any description in South Africa. We don't have it at school. We don't have it in universities. Even if you study politics, you don't study civic education.
And so why don't we have it? Why don't we have it?
I would venture to guess there's two things. The first is that there was an assumption that it would probably find its way into part of the life orientation curriculum, which it hasn't. And I think the other is that people misunderstand the IEC's mandate. The IEC, under the law, is required to education. In other words, to teach us where to put our X, how not to etc. Its job is not to teach us what a policing forum is, or a school governing body is, or a ward committee is. And there is no public institution that does that work. So it's up to civil society to end, because otherwise people only get their information on copies. And the messages of political parties obviously are designed to maximize their relative advantage. And of course what political people would do. So we can't rely on politicians to give voters partial independent information about how to make these decisions. So we've partnered with civil society organizations, we're peer-reviewed by the Constitution Hill Trust, and we've built a program that's independent, it's non-partisan, and its purpose is to provide information, not just about the democratic system, but about the physical process of voting. What happens when you walk through the gates of your voting station on election day? And then lastly, what are the tools that are available to you once that election is over to hold your government accountable, to police the police, to oversee the education system, to hold your ward councillors, your members of parliament, and your MPLs accountable.
And all that, for me, that's all the important things, isn't it? So how can I direct a listener tuned in now who wants all that voter education ASAP?
So it's available at futureelect.org. FutureElect is one word with one E in the middle. And it's also available on an app, also called Future Elect, in the Apple Store, the Huawei Store, and the Google Android Store. Our courses are micro courses, short video clips, about 1 to 3 minutes long each. And so far we've uploaded 50 of them. We're about to upload another 50. So 20 courses of 100 lessons. And each lesson is an opportunity for you to learn about government mechanisms, government systems, but also the electoral process and ultimately how you can get involved as a citizen. So go to your app store on your mobile device, download Future Elect. Again, it's one word with a one E in the middle. and go through the courses, do the quizzes, learn more, and gain more information about how to do it.
And I'm going to ask you to even tweet out the link to Future Elect. Just take SFM Radio and myself, Ashraf Garda, would gladly share that as well. Just the last thing in terms of, there's an interesting point that you bring up called information shedding in relation again to citizen engagement. Tell me about that.
So we've got a problem, at the supply side, which I've just spoken about. There's not enough information available to citizens about how to be more active. But then we also have a challenge of disinformation that is actively pushing against the availability of good quality voter and civic education. So it's not just a question of us marching into a vacuum where nothing is happening. There are people with interests in misinforming and disinforming voters, suppressing voters, preventing them from going to the polls, or convincing them to make certain decisions. So that's the thing we're trying to combat. We're trying to deal with an environment where there's not only a lack of information, but that lack of information sometimes takes the form of disinformation.
Yeah.
And that is the importance of having a resource or a series of resources that are independently vetted and that represent a good source of information for voters to be able to make critical decisions on their own about who the right people are.
I'm going to take a closer look at Future Elect, and I know, based upon the work you've done before, it'll be absolutely super and much needed to civil society. Lindiwe Mazibuko, thank you for your time.
Durban ladies trust they plan to control the 90 minutes against the University of the Western Cape. However, the students plan to demonstrate their intelligence through victory. KwaZulu-Natal confronts Western Cape. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Experience the queens of the beautiful game, Durban Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Right, we've asked for calls, we've asked for voice notes, we've asked for text messages on WhatsApp, and people have responded. Okay, and I'll get to as many of those as possible. By the way, just on the Thabo Mbeki Mashile story, one thing is questioning the analyst and his powers of good analysis or not, but let's go back to the bigger issue, and I want to focus on that, which is Thabo Mbeki himself. What then do you make of the fact that he, in fact, is, having been critical of the ANC less than a year ago, is now actively campaigning for them on the roads, on the ground today? What do you make of that, and why do you think he's doing that? If you disagree with Prince Mashile's comments, then why do you think he's doing that? Is it about his reputation? Is it about his legacy? Or is it about the legacy of the ANC? And who has convinced him to come out of the shadows and try and assist a party to, quite bluntly, not drop below 50%? Right, let's get calls. Percy from Zanin. Hi, Percy. Welcome to the show.
No, thanks very much. How are you?
I'm good indeed. Go ahead. What's your point?
No, my point is that the narrative provided that the work that has been done by the president, the former president today, it's promoting criminality. That analysis is not proper. I think as a leader of the African National Congress, a member of the ANC has got the right to form part of the election campaigns of the African National Congress. Therefore, the analysis by Prince Mashele is not proper. It is misleading, and therefore it must then be condemned with the highest.
All right. Well, you have your opinion, but what do you think about Thabo Mbeki's role then?
No, remember, as the former president of the ANC is part of the ANC of the African National Congress, and therefore all leaders of the African National Congress from time to time will then be called by the leadership of the ANC to perform specific tasks. And therefore, such tasks may not be construed as criminality, as said by Prince Mashele. That is why I'm saying his utterances are misleading, and therefore it needs to be condemned because it is not true. He is doing his work as a member of the African National Congress, mandated by the African National Congress. As the president of this country has said, that many of the leaders of the ANC would form part of the campaign trail of the African National Congress. And I think the contest should be that, as opposed to what Prince has said.
Okay, got that. And you certainly have condemned him making your point. I understand that. We'll get further calls and WhatsApp voice notes to Divine. By the way, we got Musi Maimane coming up after 5. Do not forget to listen to that. Divine from Pretoria saying Prince Mashela is misleading the ANC members and South Africans as a whole under Ramaphosa. At the moment, the ANC is on the right track. Mbeki and all the others campaigning are not blind. Well, let me pick up the last part. On the right track. How do you know they're on the right track? You only know that, and that the voters believe you after the elections. And beyond that, we don't really know, do we? Right? There's a couple more. In fact, I must get we had a chat with Reverend Francescani earlier on about the launch of the revived anti-apartheid movement with a specific emphasis on countries around the world that practices acts of apartheid, and number one in terms of what they want to do is to focus on Israel, and there's a conference coming up in about 2 weeks' time, 10th of May in fact, but I need to get you details because we said we'll get it, we just haven't been receiving it. As soon as I get that, I will pass it on. By the way, love that you connect with me, tell me where you're listening from, wherever you are in the country, I certainly want to know. Luvoyo on the line, he's from PE or Klebecha. Good chatting to you, hi.
Yes, hi, man.
Right, go ahead.
Yes, my comment about Prince Mashela, he was spot on, but they so-called these diehards of ANC, which they never see anything that is wrong that has been done by ANC members. Because President Thabo Mbeki, in his speech that he has played, he said clearly the country is being run by criminals. Meaning now, he is coming again to campaign for the criminals to put them back in the office. I think President Thabo Mbeki is really confused on his side, to be honest. He's aging. I agree 100% with Prince Mashela. He's correct. But those people so-called die out of ANC, they are taking this country down the drain because they don't see nothing wrong that is done by ANC. All those people who are on that politics of ANC, they are all have some negative activities. They must still go to court, but they are there. In Zono Commission, they are all in there.
Okay. So you're saying he's correct, and you're saying his analysis is right, and he's finding Thabo Mbeki's position very, very confusing and puzzling.
He's spot on.
Okay.
Spot on.
Got that.
Mr. Thabo Mbeki is confused.
Got that. Thabo Mbeki is confused. Got that. We'll get another voice note in a moment.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.9 FM in Port Elizabeth.
Right, here's another Mashele is right voice note.
Prince Mashele is right. That's exactly what I see. He said it himself. Mr. President Mbeki. He said it himself. He said last year. He said, how can I endorse the ANC?
Okay, no, I think that one has just jammed up here. There's nothing like we don't hear what you have to say. Something's happened there. Let me see if I can just sort out that voice.
That's nature, whichever way he said it. But you know what I mean. He's right, man. He's very right. It's just that the ANC people will never allow that. We see them. We don't need to be convinced about the ANC. We already saw it for ourselves. Everyone saw it. So if you're in denial, you're in denial. If they feed you, you have a right to be in denial. It's fine. Duma. Jobek.
Okay. The diversity of opinions we have here on the National Pulse, isn't it? So, weekday nights on S3 are about to get lit. BBC Prime Time, in this case, will give you access to a hand-picked selection of BBC Studios' award-winning dramas, documentaries and factual entertainment with titles such as Luther Critical, Cheaters, Top Gear, Live at the Apollo, Louis Theroux, Forbidden America and more. You simply don't want to miss out, right? So tune in S3, 1st of May, so it comes up next week from 9 p.m. until 11 p.m. to channel the very, very best of British entertainment with BBC Prime Time, only on S3. Open up, right? Okay, I'll tell you what, there are others who may want to comment, but I'm going to shift focus to ask you if you like to put some voice notes or text messages that you would like to ask the, wannabe president, Mmusi Maimane, because everybody wants to be the president. You know, he's my guest coming up after 5. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock with Iba Chiba.
Nkomazi residents win case against municipality and Israel considers Rafah military operation. Good day to you. Nkomazi local municipality in Mpumalanga has been found guilty of contravening an environmental act. The municipality was taken to court by the Kumati Port Despondent Residents Association for failing to fix the sewer system. This is the 4th municipality in the province to be found guilty of polluting water catchments since last year. Residents in Kumati Port say the sewage spillages are also polluting rivers.
And whatever is being fixed with wires. They don't know, I don't know if it's capacity or is it the knowledge. If they fix a pipe today or tomorrow, 3 and 4 weeks later, it is still a mess. It's still running sewage, still the same sewage for 15 months a year, running in the same streets.
We are here currently in Orlando, and here behind me you can see this pump sewer is actively overflowing. This is where the community plant their vegetables, and if you just go around there, I'll take you there now, there's a whole ditch there where it's overflowing. There's people coming, walking, they must walk through the sewage. Someone is going to get sick. It's becoming a big, big health risk to our whole community.
We know the Mpumalanga High Court in Mbombela ordered the municipality to repair the sewer system within 21 days. Municipal spokesperson Sora Pinga says a service provider has been appointed.
We are trying to resolve it. We have already sent our team there to assist us to ensure that it doesn't happen at all. But the problem that we are faced with is that we are experiencing an old infrastructure in that particular town. You know, when the town grows every day and also the infrastructure becomes so strained.
9 people have been sentenced to a total of almost 11,000 years in prison for defrauding SARS. One of those sentenced received close to 3,000 years. The accused were charged on 391 counts, which included money laundering, fraud and forgery. The Hawks say the accused submitted fraudulent VAT returns for and on behalf of companies and claimed undue VAT refunds from SARS. And in support of their claims, they forged invoices. Hawks spokesperson Katlego Mogale.
It is reported that during 2009 and 2016, the accused were members of various entities registered in terms of the Close Corporations and Companies Acts, and thus also registered their companies for value-added tax in terms of the South African Revenue Services Act. A total of 23 cases were opened at the Johannesburg Central Police Station against the accused for investigation. These cases were referred to the Gauteng-based Serious Commercial Crime Investigation for in-depth probe. The
memorial service of murdered comedian and DJ Peter Mabuse, commonly known by his stage name Mashata, is underway in Pretoria. The service has been organised by the Tshwane University of Technology. He was shot and killed after performing at a pub in Soshanguve, north of Pretoria, on Saturday. Horasani Sitole reports.
It's a celebration, a great laugh and dance of a life well lived. Friends, family, fans and colleagues have come out in numbers to pay homage to Mashata, the noisemaker as he was also known. Attendees have been entertained by a DJ set as Mashata was known to create magic behind the decks. For SABC News, I'm Morisani Sitole.
Israel's war cabinet is meeting to discuss a possible major military operation in Rafah and southern Gaza. The Israeli government believes that several Hamas battalions remain there, along with many of the hostages still held by the group. The BBC's James Landale has more.
Tent cities are being built to try and have a place where civilians can go during this military operation. There are reports of senior Israeli officials meeting with their Egyptian counterparts in Cairo, because clearly there is a huge risk for Egypt that this conflict, this operation, spills over into Egypt. We know that a couple of battalions of Israeli army reservists have been mobilized, but that said, the Israeli government has still yet to decide how and when it's going to carry out this operation.
Top story: the Nkomazi local municipality in Mpumalanga has been found guilty of contravening an environmental act. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Gous.
In your sports this hour, City without Haaland for crucial trip against Brighton tonight, and Woods and McIlroy to receive loyalty payouts from PGA Tour. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound is slow moving towards Buccleuch interchange. The N12 westbound has a crash reported at the N1 Diepkloof interchange. The M1 southbound is slow moving through Crown interchange towards Boysons. In Midrand, the N1 southbound is queuing towards Buccleuch interchange, and the N1 northbound has a stationary vehicle after Allendale Road exit reported. Eskom Patleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the M7 westbound has a crash on the off-ramp to Belleville Road, queuing delays. The M4 northbound is queuing near the Broadway Durban North exit, and the N3 northbound in Howick has truck crash recovery underway near Lions River interchange. All lanes are open, but traffic is still slow moving. In Cape Town, Batencroft Street outbound in the CBD is slow moving. That's towards the elevated freeway. Voortrekker Road eastbound slow moving through Maitland. The M5 southbound queuing towards Racecourse Road exit. Turfel Road in Athlone is slow moving near the M7 Jakes Hadville Drive, and Old Paul Road in Brackenfell is slow moving at Okavango Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
The Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the Electricity Regulation Bill B23B23 on 24 April 2024 at Ngaka Mudiri Mulema District in Madibugo Community Hall in Madibugo, at Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District in Matlosani Auditorium Hall, at Dr. Ruth Somuti Mompati in Utlwanang Community Hall in Christiana, at Bojanala District in Letabile Community Hall in Letabile. All hearings start at 10.
The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here, and the live concert happening with a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances.
Make some beautiful noise!
On the lineup, Oscar Mbo, Oskido, Dala Tuxin, Makadzi, Lamise Hallworthy, Mtunzi, Luandlungulu, Umshaga, Amos, Naked DJ, and a special live performance by the internationally acclaimed Hoabili.
You can now secure your tickets from 300 Rand at computicket.co.za. Don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration 27th April at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga. #MMA24. Black to the future. Metro FM. It's where you want to be.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And we certainly hope that you are completely connected to the National Pulse. By the way, any thoughts and ideas and suggestions you have in terms of the content that we cover on the show that you'd like to hear more often about, feel free to, in this case, probably the best way is to WhatsApp text us, because it means we get it like immediately, okay? So feel free to do that, and you know that the text number or voice notes 0614 104 107. We'll connect to Musi Maimani pretty shortly. He's with us. We're just connecting him and getting him on the road, so to speak. But there's a range of other voice notes that we've been sent across the country, and I thought I'd play a couple, including moving away from Thabo Mbeki, but the leadership of the incumbent president of our country, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Good afternoon, Akraf. You're speaking to Tembinkosi Msimanga at Dube, Soweto. When I remember Thabo Mbeki once said the leadership of Ramaphosa is an autopilot. Now, because he hates Zuma more than Ramaphosa, he's campaigning for the autopilot to lead our country again. If it was Malema, people would have called him a flip-flopper. But because he's the old man, they will always defend him.
So he's not a flip-flopper, according to as you said. Being an older man, people will defend him. That's another opinion. Right, here's another one, of course, and it's all about the ANC here.
Yeah, it's always fun when someone comes out and says they are happy with the ANC to give them another opportunity, even though they are not perfect. And then someone will come and say, no, that person is saying that because they are eating. No, man, it can't be like that. People have different experiences of the ANC, and they also see the opposition and see there's no potential. It's Yandisa, Eastern Cape.
Okay, and then you cannot have a show at this point in time without bringing up the name of the other former president, Jacob Zuma.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Christina here. You know, Ashraf, we know that most of the judges there at Constitutional Court hate Zuma with passion. And we know that most of them were involved in this AR-17 scandal. And we know that, especially Judge Zondo. Now the EIC went to Constitutional Court so that the case won't be appealable. We know that the media is so sad. They want the MK and Zuma out.
The media wants MK and Zuma out. Others may say the media wants MK and Zuma in. Who do we believe? There's another comment about the Zuma administration.
Afternoon, Ashraf. I'm just inquisitive about a Zuma administration which might be formed post May 29. Is he going to give the Guptas immunity so that they can return? The show goes on. Major from Kwatema.
The show goes on. What's the song? To the tune of Queen. The show must go on. I can't sing as well as them. Absolutely, there you are. All right, let's move on. So we're going to put the Ramaphosa, the Zuma, the Thabo Mbeki issues on hold for now because my guest is ready to talk to me. So every Thursday, and we've been doing this for the last month or two in the build-up to the elections on the 29th of May, we have this feature called the Election Monitor. We get a party leader and we talk to him or her for about, 45 minutes or so, just under an hour. Of course, the whole show is an hour. So today my guest is Mmusi Maimane, the leader of Build One South Africa, or BOZA, as we often hear him repeat on various platforms. Mmusi, I appreciate your time, and now you're live on the National Pulse. Okay, we not yet connected there, because there's some silence. Let's see if we can just sort that out in a moment. Let me just also remind you, if you do follow, by the way, do follow SFM Radio on Facebook as well as on the X platform, and you can check out our tweets because we tweet regularly, and there's lots of the podcasts get posted there on both those platforms immediately after the interviews we have, so you have a good chance to listen and re-listen to the conversations that we have, and then do follow me as well, Ashraf Garda. So spelled, people have asked me about my name spelling, so Ashraf, Ashraf, and the surname Garda, Ashraf, Ashraf, surname Garda. And yes, I am available on all social media platforms. Mmusi Maimane is available too after this.
The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here, and the live concert happening with a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances.
Make some beautiful noise!
On the lineup, Oscar Mbo, Oskido, Dala Tuxin, Makadzi, Lamise Hallworthy, Mtunzi, Luandrungulu, Umshaga, Amos, Naked DJ, and a special live performance by the internationally acclaimed Hoabili.
You can now secure your tickets from 300 Rand at computicket.co.za. Don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration. 27th April at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga. #MMA24. Black to the future. Metro FM. It's where you want to be.
Durban Ladies Trust they plan to control the 90 minutes against the University of the Western Cape. However, the students plan to demonstrate their intelligence through victory. KwaZulu-Natal confronts Western Cape. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Experience the queens of the beautiful game, Durban Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012-568-3233. That's 012-568-3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Right, so every Thursday we have this feature called the Election Monitor, and today, speaking to different leaders all throughout the last month or so, today is the turn of Mmusi Maimane, the leader of Build One South Africa. So Mmusi, good chatting to you, and you're now live on the National Pulse. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to fellow South Africans. It's great to see you, Ashraf, and great to be on your show.
Thank you. Well, and at a time when not just you, but every other political party, understandably, are jockeying for votes, and you want position, and you want to get to the top, and the finishing straight on May 29th, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's been an incredible election campaign, and with 35 days to go, I can feel the mood of South Africans who are all generally committed to this country, want to see change. We can feel, as we're going across all 9 provinces, people receptive to our message. And so however difficult and sometimes tiring all of it is, you've got to feel the pulse of a nation that is enthusiastic about change, nervous about certain things, but overall, I'm really, having done elections before, this is a very unique one and a very important one.
And you bring up an important point. I mean, do you get a sense that this want for change is not, and I'll talk about your party in a moment, of course, right? But it's less about saying we're going to support Build One SA, but more that we actually just want change because of an unhappiness with the current status quo.
I think it's both end. I think it's also, on the first instance, no citizen wants to wake up to darkness because there's no electricity or feel unsafe at home, or invariably be lingering at home because they can't find a job. And after a consistent few decades of doing that, people eventually get to a point where they're like, that surely something must be better than this. And I also don't want to dismiss that in the COVID period, many of us were glued to our TV screens, literally watching politicians loot, or report after report of food parcels not getting to the intended recipients because councillors were hogging them off. And I think South Africans, it gave us a universal language that then began to say, we need change. Now, of course, the job that we have to do as Build One South Africa is not only just to say to them, this is what's wrong with the current status quo, but to say, well, this is what that change will mean. And that's been the hard work that we've had to bake into the thing. I think it's almost universally accepted that we need change. What the question is, what happens after the change? And we've really baked our message into saying, well, that change must put a job in every home. We must make sure people are safe, and we must educate our kids. But that is the hard work that we had to do.
You've also been very clear, and I'm looking at it both in campaigns, but also, I suppose social media platforms are a campaign platform anyway, right? About, Mmusi Maimane for president. Realistically, you want to be the president of South Africa?
The office of president is one of the most important institutions we have in this country. And certainly because our constitution was written with President Mandela in mind, there are inordinate powers that are put into the office of the president. I don't feel that I'm just standing because everybody certainly is doing that. It's the fashionable thing to do. But I think in some ways there is a deep sense that, one, I've been able to collaborate with many different parties all across the political spectrum in different racial groups, which I think is going to be a very, very important skill to bring to the table post this election, given that we are heading into a coalition election. Secondly, we have a vision for this country. So, one of my favorite philosophers, a guy called Dallas Willard, says, worry not about the position you occupy, worry that you've got something to say or to do. And therefore, committed by a vision where in the last number of years I've really studied the economics of this country, figured out what's wrong with our education. We don't just put a message that says a job in every home because we think it's sexy, but we think that we have a plan to fix ESCOM, we have a plan to fix Transnet, we have a deliberate plan about investing in SMMEs, developing our manufacturing sector, and ensuring that more and more people can find work. I have a passion for education to make sure that we can move the pass mark from 30% to 50% and make sure that the quality of education children get from grade 0 all the way to matric is improved. So the office of president gives you not only the sense of selecting the best cabinet of the future, but also delivering on that vision and that plan. And therefore, the ambition for the office is predicated simply on that plan and being able to say, let's bring South Africans together to achieve that goal.
And it sounds like a silly question to ask, but I need to do it anyway. Like, how important is that office of presidency? I mean, you gave the Mandela example, I hear you, meaning that, is it that important where that leader, that single leader who gets in will have more than a 50, 60, 70% impact on what happens to the country for the next 5 years? Or am I overplaying his or her importance?
Yeah, it's not overplayed, because typically in a democracy, when your institutions are strong, then the role of the individual of the office of the president is downplayed. Because, let me use a parallel example, the US can go through cycles of elections. The institution that is government continues to work, and ultimately then the individual, whatever the decisions they make, are counted and are worked and are held accountable by the institution. In our country, the thing that we've seen in the last 15 years has been the decaying of those institutions. I feel like the last 30 years are a game of two halves. We started off building great constitutional institutions, the public protector, the National Prosecuting Authority, all of those institutions. The second 15 years was about eroding those institutions, which means naturally the role of them, the leader, becomes important. And we felt it. We felt it at least in the last number of years, where whoever is appointed the National Prosecuting Authority can determine who gets prosecuted and who doesn't. We've had to correct for that. But that tells you that the presidency and the president have got a very important role to play. So in the next 5-10 years, in rebuilding those institutions, making sure that the capability of government is restored so that the excesses of power can be curtailed and the mandate can be served, it is going to be vital that as South Africans, we pick a South African who not only is going to ensure that no one loots the money, but also ensure that the team around them can be able to charter the interests of all South Africans. And that's why it is important to elect the right person at a time such as this one.
All right, so as you talk to me, you don't just talk to me, you talk to listeners around the nation, all connected to the National Pulse, but also you talk to an electorate, you're talking to a voter, and you know that. You're pitching to me, you're pitching to them at the same time, right? So how do you intend, if the case for Mmusi Maimane is president, we'll look through some of your policies just now, but if the case is for Mmusi Maimane as president, how do you intend to achieve that, keeping in mind, well, you know the numbers, we all know the numbers about what the ANC has achieved before, and the other parties. Tactically, how do you intend to achieve getting into that position where you could lead the country?
Yeah, look, I mean, I certainly believe in collaboration and working with South Africans. And I think one of the reasons we fought so much for the electoral amendment bill was about making sure that we could actually make sure accountability is to citizens first and foremost, and that better coalition building can work. And I really am intent on steering a government of national unity that is a grand opposition coalition. And I was going to be clear about that, because I think post that, if we get the ANC sub 50%, I think we need to bring all South Africans together in the opposition. I think it'll be good for the ANC to be on the bench for a little bit. It will give them the space to do their project called renewal. And I think it'll be important that if you bring a grand coalition together, not only do you free up the resources of government so that no one party can capture it, but you also allow a collaboration of ideas and the best team. The second thing is, I've already began thinking a lot about what type of cabinet you could build and what type of ministries you could do. So, for example, we desperately as a country need a ministry of digitization in the future. And then you look around the grand opposition and say, who are the best person for that? I think the economy and treasury need to come together, because you express your fiscal policy through your economic policy and ensure that you can deliver jobs. The idea of a ministry of logistics rather than just one of transport, so that you can deal with Transnet and passenger rail, so that more and more people can get to and work and goods can move around. So we've spent quite a bit of time looking at what kind of cabinet we would look, along with skilling and education, etc. And then the third dynamic to that is also about saying, well, what are then the 10 priority points that we put, so that the president doesn't come to the State of the Nation ideas with fresh, grandiose visions of what Ntswalo and all of that looks like, but actually arrives there to account on that 10-point plan. And we've had a trial of it. When I was leader of the opposition in 2016, you'll remember we put together a coalition of the opposition in Johannesburg that elected Herman Mashaba, and that stayed over the 3-year period when I was leader there, because we ensured that we had a timetable, a plan which we communicated back to citizens. We will need those skills going into what will be a very, very fractious period for the next number of years as the ANC loses its power, but also as we living in a global society that is chartering a new future and a future of uncertainty. I think it's a powerful opportunity. And lastly, Ashraf, I think if I was to make a case for myself, no leader arrives in office perfect, right? We when I left Parliament in 2019, I'd gained the experience of what Parliament looks like. I'd fought many battles. I'd succeeded in some of them and lost some of them. You need the sense of having tasted both victory and defeat.
Well,
I mean, the last 5 years,
carry on. Go
have
ahead.
Been an opportunity for me to do two very significant things. I got involved in business. Not only because I needed to earn an income, because when you leave Parliament out of principle, I was leaving really to unemployment. So I learned an incredible fortune about how it takes to actually create a job, what frustrations business people go through. But I also furthered my academic studies, and I'm busy now completing a PhD in local governance and economic models. So you almost come to 2024 having taken the break in between, so that you can refresh, rethink, think about what needs to happen, and you arrive with better skills and the experience that has come through.
So to use the analogy that you've said, so the ANC, you wanting them to get on the bench, and then you've come off the bench now, maybe refreshed. So let me ask you this: you made the point about the ANC gets 50 plus, then the discussion's over, right, for now. But if the ANC gets 50 minus, then all these other plans come into play, right? So I'll talk about some of the policies, Jeb. I'm interested in your jobs issue, but we'll talk about that just now. Let's just stay with this before news time. What then is your plan as Build One South Africa to take advantage of an ANC 50 minus?
I mean, I've just articulated the working tirelessly in making sure that grand opposition coalition works. And I think that's going to be crucial. You need a blend of new experienced members of parliament. And one of the things that we've done almost intentionally was allow communities to select their candidates. We've got a direct constituency-based model. Each of them had to bring 1,000 signatures, which means you've got fresh talent to work with, people who can look at our challenges fresh. But also you've got institutional experience, which means I understand how committees work, how Parliament works, etc. So that's going to be crucial in being able to keep the stability of government going forward and making sure that grand opposition works, but also the global standing of South Africa. The last thing we need is to change government and govern worse than the previous ones. It almost would be more damaging than keeping status quo. And therefore, I think for the purpose of South Africa, we don't have a choice. We need to make sure the next 5 years work.
Okay,
and I'm committed to working.
Right, we're on to news time. Just a quick one. In terms of the grand coalition working, how for you would it stick? You've got about 45 seconds to answer that.
Yeah. Bring obviously all the numbers will add up to 50 plus 1, but also more importantly, where parties who are not aligned from a policy point of view, they can just simply say, look, we're not going to join the coalition formally, but we could sponsor votes to elect the president and pass the budget, etc. And that coalition will be bound by a pact, which is the 10-point plan to deliver on the interests of all South Africans.
Okay, more to come in terms of some of the key policies of Build One South Africa, headed by Musi Maimani, as part of our feature that we do every Thursday around what we call Election Monitor. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30. Here's Greg Coase.
Thank you, Ashraf. A quick look at those headlines. The Reserve Bank governor says the Corporation for Deposit Insurance will safeguard bank depositors and bring further confidence to the country's financial sector. In Kumasi, a local municipality in Mpumalanga has been found guilty of contravening an environmental act. And one of Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein's rape convictions has been overturned by New York's top court. More on that story and other news at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Pomona Road in Kempton Park has a truck crash reported at the R21 highway. The road has been closed off. The N1 southbound in Midrand is queuing towards Buccleuch interchange, and Eske and Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In KZN, the M7 westbound has a crash on the off-ramp to Belleville Road. The N3 westbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the M7 westbound is queuing at Bel Air Wexley Road Junction. In Cape Town, Viking Way eastbound is queuing towards the N7 Jakes Hadville Drive. Marine Drive northbound is slow moving towards Sunset Beach, and Veltevreden Drive is closed between Cedar Avenue and Spine Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, what's in your sports bag?
Well, Kaizer Chiefs midfielder Siyathembe Sithebe has weighed in on talks that the club's problems may need the intervention of a traditional healer. As they near the end of their 9th season without silverware, discussions among supporters of the game have suggested that perhaps Chiefs seeks traditional solutions. And asked for his thoughts, Sithebe says that at the end of the day, it's all about the beliefs of the club.
Kulokho ngakusho ukuthi wonke umuntu ubhilivela into enabhilivela kuyona, and obviously if we culture like ekhaya kwenziwa so as a player mangifika ngizodlalela i-team, and obviously i-big team obviously kune-culture yakhona, and those things izinto esingangena kuzona kakhulu, and yena as a supporter indlela abona ngayo ukuthi kumele kulungiselana la, we don't know ukuthi why isho njalo, but thina so focusa kulokho kwenziwa kula ekhaya.
Well, elsewhere, Manchester City will be without top scorer Erling Haaland when they play at Brighton tonight. The forward also missed Saturday's FA Cup semi-final win over the Blues due to a muscle injury sustained during the Champions League quarter-final loss to Real Madrid 3 days earlier. City will have Phil Foden and John Stokes back when they have a chance to climb back to within a point of leaders Arsenal, but still with a game in hand. Then in rugby, Dylan Sage and Sivuye Soizwapi are back in the Blitzboks set up for next weekend's Sevens tournament in Singapore. Sage will return to the Springboks Sevens team for the first time in 4 years, and Soizwapi for the first time this season. The inclusion of the two stalwarts is among 5 changes made to the squad that finished 6th in Hong Kong earlier this month. In cricket, the Indian Premier League's impact player rule has led to skyrocketing totals and quenched fans' thirst for runs, but not everyone is happy with that change, especially the all-rounders in the popular T20 tournament. It was introduced last season, and basically the rule allows teams to bring in a substitute at any time for a player in the starting 11. The teams have been using it to great effect in the current campaign, swapping out a bowler for a batter during a run chase and bringing up 200-plus totals frequently. Sunrisers Hyderabad used that rule to their advantage a very different way. Then in golf, Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy are among the golfers expected to be given equity in PGA Tour Enterprises as a thank you for sticking with the tour instead of jumping to Live Golf. Woods will receive around 1.9 billion rand and McIlroy around 952 million rand stake in the newly formed enterprise for not taking lucrative offers from the Saudi-backed Live as merger negotiations between the two circuits continue to drag on. So basically, the program will reward top-performing members and legends who helped build the modern PGA Tour. The initial round of player equity grants will total to 17 billion rand and will be awarded to 193 PGA Tour members, with the majority of that going to the top 36 players as determined by a performance-based formula. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for SAFM Sport. Ke nna Tumeng Kgapele, Modimo.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
All right. So we'll talk tomorrow. Absolutely. Thank you. There we are. Tumi will give us the big updates on sport all around the world. In fact, let's now get into, we can talk to again Musi Maimane just now. He's coming up shortly for part 2 or the second half of this conversation. But before we get there, we need to talk finance as we always do. Jimmy, we have you there, right? With the Money Web market update.
Let me go find Ashraf. I'll be back.
Okay, Jimmy.
Jimmy, here? Okay, we need to connect with Jimmy. Let's just see if we can sort that out in a moment or so. And then we'll get back to Musi Maimane too.
The Northwest Legislature's Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will embark on public hearings throughout the province on the Plant Health Phytosanitary Bill B14B21 on 25 April 2024 at Ngakamudiri Mulema District in Motswedi Community Hall in Motswedi, at Dr. Kenneth Kaunda District in Agricultural College in Potchefstroom, at Dr. Ruth Somotsi Mompati in Tosca Community Hall in Tosca, at Bojanala District in Safer Scale Community Hall in Safer Scale. All hearings start at 10.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, the Money Web market update. Jimmy, we do have you there now, right?
Yes, we do indeed. Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to you and to me and the listeners. Today's show, quite a busy show. A lot has been happening on the markets today, obviously following those announcements that we saw via the SENS from the likes of BHP around that Anglo acquisition. We're going to be chatting to a commodities specialist or commodities portfolio manager at Anchor Capital around that, understanding that deal, seeing how significant it is to the JSE and to other stocks on the JSE. Then we've got a conversation with the CEO of the Clicks Group. They announced their interim results as well today alongside all the other SENS announcements. I'm going to speak to Bettina Engelbrecht around that performance, get a sense of where the company is after 6 months, what the next 6 months look like for them and what their plans are in that respect. And then we're going to reflect on the recent African Private Capital Association summit that was held in Johannesburg. It was held over the last 2 days from Tuesday to today. I've got a conversation with AVCA's CEO around that to just see what the state of investment within Africa is and what investors are thinking about when they look at the African continent at the moment. And then, because it is Thursday, we've got our SME of the Week feature today, and today I'm speaking to a company called Homation. They do home automation, quite an interesting business to go into. They automate everything from your media room to your lighting to having your appliances switch on. They can even automate access to your home. So So quite an interesting business to look into there, and they're going to be our SME of the week for today. But before we get to that, as I said, markets have been moving along with some of the announcements that we've gotten, and Henko Clear has been keeping an eye on those markets for us. He joins me now to just reflect on some of those market movements. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for watching the markets for us. Big day for some companies, other companies not such a big day and not such a good day, and the Rand finally looking in the right direction.
Yes, Jimmy. Good evening to you and Ashraf and Tumi, and good evening to all the listeners. Yes, all of those things looking up today, but not the same story in the US at the moment. US markets are in the red and quite deep, like the Dow Jones now losing 1.8%, the S&P 500 trading 1.5% weaker, and the Nasdaq also 1.8% down. And then European stocks, they finished quite mixed, with the FTSE 100 in London gaining 0.4% today, but then the DAX and the CAC 40 both losing 1%. The JSE finished 0.25% weaker today at 74,329 points. The industrial index lost 1.4%, and the financial index finished 0.2% weaker. But then the resources index tried to make up for all of these losses by gaining 2.8% today. It's almost 3% up at the end of the day. And the main reason for that was because of Anglo, because Anglo finished today 18.9%. That's 19% stronger at the end of the day. But you will unpack and unwrap that for us later in your 6 o'clock show. But yes, not every day that you see that you enjoy a gain of 19% on an investment like the Anglo shareholders did today. Then British American Tobacco and First Rand, they each lost 1%, followed by Glencore and Prosus losing 2.2%, and Richmond, Naspers and BHP each 2.5% weaker at the end of the day. Other companies also on the losing end today, Amplats finishing 9.5% down, Northern 5.5% weaker, Sasol 4.5% weaker at the end of the day, and there's also Exaro as well as Implats finishing the day 3% weaker. But back to some good news. A company by the name of Karoo gained 13% today, and there's also Redefine finishing 3% stronger. ARM, Alphaman, Anglo Gold as well as Resilient each gained 2% at the end of the day. On the commodities market, the price of gold $2,334 an ounce. Silver is trading at $27.40. Platinum $908, and palladium now sitting at $975. The price of Brent crude is $87.80 a barrel. And yes, the rand moving in the right direction today and looking up. You only pay 19 rand and 5 cents today for a US dollar, then 23 rand 78 for a pound, 20 rand 40 for a euro, and 12 rand 40 for an Australian dollar. And Bitcoin is trading at $63,270, and that's 1,240,000 rand. And that, Jimmy, is how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. Only 19 rand and 4 cents for a US dollar. I yearn for the days when, or the day when we'll say it is 17 rand, 16 rand, or even 15 rand for the US dollar. Obviously, there is a lot that needs to be done to get to that point, and some of those things we'll unpack in our show a little later on. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Right, thanks for that, Jimmy. Right, let's get on to the business of Mmusi Maimane once again, the leader of Build One South Africa. To tell you, there are some people, there's lots of voice notes, we just can't play them all. There's lots of text messages, you can also tweet them out, by the way. Just tag myself, Ashraf Garda, SFM Radio, tag Mmusi Maimane, to use the hashtag The National Pulse, and there's a few calls we can take, but we'll do them all in the last 5 minutes as we get up to 6 o'clock, okay? So Mmusi, let's then chat about the one issue that I think has certainly got me thinking whenever I see your election posters all around the suburbs that I drive in, which is a job in every home. So do you literally mean that, and tell me how you intend doing just that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think South Africa is in many ways two nations, right? On another level, 40% of our households are living without a single job in the home. Income in their homes are based on remittances and welfare. And therefore, we have to ensure that at least there is an adult in that home who is then working. That's an important issue of dignity. And so the actual work that we've got to do is do two things. One, set the appropriate conditions. That's about keeping the lights on, and we've proposed that we use SMRs to deal with base load so that electricity is a constant. Secondly, deal with logistics. That's about the movement of goods by splitting Transnet into its two component parts so that goods can move in and out of the country, and also ensure that passengers are able to get to and from work easier. Thirdly is about skilling of your young people, because unless they've got an appropriate education, they're not going to be able to apply or be employable in any jobs. And then lastly, keep particular communities safe so that investment can flow into that. So that's the first component of making sure. The second one is, if you produce 2 million jobs in the next while, key sectors are crucial. The first one is dealing with SMMEs and dealing with the township economy. We've proposed a 220 billion rand investment into that, because we can ensure that in communities, particularly where unemployment is high, there is a sense upon which SMMEs can come through. Secondly, we've got to stimulate manufacturing out of those SMMEs. And why I raise that point is because technology such as kettle making and microwaves are archaic technology, yet South Africa's market production of those are below 4%. And therefore, if we upend that and make sure that there's higher levels of production, we can ensure that there is a job in every home. Thirdly, we want to introduce a national civilian service, which is about asking young people to spend a year post-school where they can spend 6 months in internship programs in government and 6 months working. That way you employ them for the full year and give them the full experience. And then lastly, it is indeed about making sure that when you look at the broader economy, sectors, particularly in rural communities, etc., your agricultural sectors, your tourism sectors are upended so that you can literally deliver through expanded public works program a job in every home. So for me, the target is quite simple. Let's make sure over the next 5 years, we can produce 2 million jobs. That's the focus.
Right. Let's talk about just your thoughts on skills growth. I mean, I hear the jobs part, but a lot of that depends on growth, on economic growth and skills growth of the country. Tell me about that.
So if we do all of that, setting up the right conditions, fixing our digital infrastructure, just by being able to keep the lights on and invest in digital technology, by the proliferation of data and availability of data, you can already add just over 2% to that. Increase South Africa's savings and give them instruments that are able to do that and improve the savings rate. You can then be able to purchase some of the economic growth that you need. So that's on one component. The skilling part is absolutely crucial. You know, Ashraf, let's track a child's journey in this country. When a child is born in this country, many of our citizens, because of poverty, are born malnourished. So I've proposed that, in fact, we've got to improve the maternal grant so that it begins before a child is born, so that we don't have children that are born malnourished, because it downplays their ability to achieve their economic potential. Secondly, we've got to make sure the first 1,000 days are well looked after so that brain development is effective, particularly in very poor communities. I think about provinces like the Eastern Cape, the Northern Cape, where there's a proliferation of not only fetal alcohol syndrome, but malnourishment as a function of poverty. Thirdly, we've got to stimulate our ECD centers. We've got to make them mandatory for every child to go through. And whilst all of us can be desperate to get free higher education, let's make sure our ECD sector is productive so that we never repeat a stat like 8 out of 10 of our children not being able to read for meaning by the age of 10. Let's at primary school make sure that teachers, the best teachers, particularly maths and science teachers and teachers who can teach robotics and new technical skills, can be able to be employed and stay there. One of the great tragedies is when you bump into someone who says, I was a former teacher, now they're selling copiers and printers and all of that. Whilst those industries are important, we need them actually in the classroom. And then introduced a degree of blended learning so that there's more technology in the classroom. I met with the Indian government to be able to discuss how they're starting to deploy potentially artificial intelligence and personalizing learning experiences for children. It's not going to replace the teacher in the classroom, but you can ensure that there's a combination of both. You have to, in funding for education, say to yourself, how do you give each parent a voucher model so that they can choose where the best schools are? It's always sad had when I, for example, having grown up in Dobsonville, Soweto, had to travel kilometers outside of Dobsonville to find an education and then have to come back. So particularly in the high school status, we've got to give a form of charter education so that young people can do that, can be able to get the best schools and make the choice, reduce dropout rates, improve the pass mark from 30% to 50%, and focus yourself on even aspects such as mathematics. Here's a frightening thought. Of the 1 million children that started school in 2012, literally 24% of them passed mathematics. Those who took mathematics passed mathematics at over 50%. The rest didn't. So it tells you the fact that we're not producing young people who can participate in an economy that is fast digitizing. And fundamentally, they need to be able to do maths, science, technology, and be able to participate in that. So we've got to streamline for that. And then, yes, I don't want for vocational training or TVET colleges, as they typically call, to be seen as dropout zones. We've got to use those as aspirational, because our economy isn't going to depend on only professionals from the sense of doctors, lawyers, and all of that who get to university, but you've got to ensure that your engineers, your plumbers, all of that is looked after. And one of the stats that worries me in that sector is that the throughput in TVET colleges is only at 10.4%, which tells you that actually you've got a whole ton of young kids getting into those, but only most of them actually not being able to get through it. So we've got to produce an artisan culture, but much of it depends on, as a country, us believing in our young people.
Well, I mean,
one of the saddest things in this country is that this government doesn't really believe in our kids.
Okay, well, I mean, maybe that's a good point just to stop for now, because, I mean, I've certainly having done an overview of what your party policies are. I mean, there's so much of it which is sound, which is actually practical, which gives a sense of that it's been very, very well thought through. But here's the big question, right? How much of it was possibly implementable before, but not implementable only because the ruling party chose not to, or they have a different policy, but can be implementable by you, or is it very difficult? What I'm saying is how easy is that wish list to be attainable?
Yeah, look, often the question to me is, what would you do in your first 100 days? And I think the first starting point is, if you build the capability of government by employing the best people into the state, you then give yourself the freedom to be able to implement those policies. These are not difficult things. We've got to learn from countries that have been able to do it. And you've got to make some tough decisions and tough choices. You've got to say to yourself that within a fiscally constrained environment with limited growth, how then do you prioritize spending in certain things? So our education spend isn't a problem, but we've protected senior administrators to a point where you kind of come through senior sections of government where people are overpaid, but their delivery is low, whereas people who are doing the work itself are not. It's like the same in multiple departments, home affairs, etc. It's policy decisions that then force you to say, even in policing, how do you devolve certain powers so that a police station can work and ultimately focus on crime fighting and bringing intelligence lower down to the ground? Those are policy positions that don't have to cost you much, but you can evolve some of your legislative framework, give more powers back to provinces, but also ensure that you can merge policing with metro police, etc., so that you increase the force. Okay. So some of it is about where do you prioritize spend, some of it is about changing policy, but I do think in the next 5 years, it's a very practicable thing to do.
Okay, we're chatting to Mmusi Maimane, the leader of Build One South Africa. We're going to stop at 6 o'clock, which means it's incredibly tight. I mean, I wish we could speak for another hour. We certainly do not have that luxury. In fact, in many ways, it reflects the type of deadlines that the country faces in solving its problems, like it's all urgent, urgent, urgent. So maybe time for 2 calls, 2 WhatsApps. That's probably the best I can do. So if you intend to call or WhatsApp, just send that message right away. I'll see what I can do and squeeze it in before 6 o'clock. But Mmusi, here's the thought, right? In terms of the policies that you've put out again, that is, premised like manifestos. It's premised on not just your party, but all other parties winning an election. How does that plan then change when your party, A, doesn't get the 50 plus, or your party then does get the 50 plus within a coalition with, as you know, a whole series of other multi-parties who need to negotiate policies that gets all of you to sit on one table? Practically, how would that work out?
So on opposition, let's assume current status quo continues. Well, I'll be sending most of our MPs to focus on education, to focus on finance, because I think those are two critical components of government. We've got to fix for those, and we've got to work hard at that. But let's assume we do get to the 50+1, which is that grand opposition coalition that we keep speaking about. I do certainly think that you've got to steer away from ideological positions where you are extremist on either end. Come with pragmatic, practical solutions for a country. If you disagree with me that we need to skill the country, then I'm not sure what universe you are living in. If you disagree that at least let's keep the lights on by introducing a degree of technology that deals with baseload, then we can't work together. Otherwise, we'll govern worse. So I do think on a 10-point plan, we're able to find each other with parties because they're very pragmatic and practical. And that's why we've put ourselves as the centrist party that can hold the best of both public and private sector.
Are there parties that you can't work with?
Parties that are corrupt and racist would exclude themselves just by nature. And I'll let the viewers decide which those parties are.
Okay, and we'll see what happens when you sit at the table. Just your quick thoughts on basic income grant.
We were one of the few that advanced it in the beginning. I think that given the fact that just over half of our citizens live below the upper poverty line, there cannot be a debate about whether we need a floor income that people cannot dip below. So I would certainly look at introducing that. And if for functions of affordability, what I would also do is make it a targeted one, particularly in communities that face profound poverty, so that you don't dip below. But here's the next crucial thing, is that if you want to introduce a basic income grant, it cannot be means tested in the sense that you don't want to dissuade people from looking for work, and the condition that if they find work, they lose their income. You've got to almost be able to ensure that it adds towards whatever income they would derive from finding a job.
What's the single, you spoke about 100 days, just so ignore the 100-day factor. What's the single biggest thing that you, either as the leader or you as a huge influence within a coalition, will want to implement ASAP?
Education. Let's fix that. Because if we don't, the future of our young people is doomed. And then we go back to literally the trajectory of a child who's born poor remains exactly the same as what they were pre-94, which is a crime. So let's fix for that and ensure that we can fix it. And I've already mentioned the fact that building a capability of the state and then dealing with the economic issues is going to be vital. So I would really look at skilling our South Africans.
Okay. And quick thought, A, affirmative action, B, just 30 seconds.
Sorry, say that again.
Your thoughts on BEE and affirmative action, 30-second comment.
Redress is important. These are policies that, in the way they've been constructed by the government, have not worked. But we've got a policy called Build One Economy that looks at how do we do inclusion. And I've said to myself, I'm going to introduce a Jobs and Justice Fund to which companies can contribute towards so that we can fund entrepreneurs and fund education.
Okay.
That's the focus.
Let's get to two very, very quick calls. So we've got Mfundo and Solly. If you come on, please be 30 seconds only. We can't really do more than that. Mfundo, go ahead from Cape Town. Hi.
Hi, Ashraf and Musi. I'm going to have two questions. What is Musi putting on the table when it comes to land distribution without compensation? And secondly, education. I hear you, Musi. However, what about the status of free education? What is the take on that?
Okay, got that. In fact, what I'll do is let's get Musi. I'll get the next call as well. Thanks, Mfundo. Solly from Cape Town, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon, Mr. Maimani.
Afternoon.
Who I know well. I'll be very quick because I don't have time. On the Stephen Critter show, Mr. Maimani denied that there was a genocide going on, and an hour later when I confronted him, it was a different picture. Can he clearly tell the world now, is there a genocide after 200 days, yes or no?
Okay, got that. Solly, thanks for that. Right, Musi, you've got a minute to answer both those questions.
On the first, I think land is a function of restitution, and therefore I don't think we need an amendment of the Constitution. Expropriation already exists within our Constitution, so let's focus on ensuring that we do the redistributive work that must happen in there. In terms of free higher education, the policy is quite simple. If your parents were not able to go to university post If your parents were not able to go to university pre-1994, then the state must be able to fund your education, and the first time you start to pay back is when you find a job. On the third, which is the Middle Eastern crisis, I'm the first one to admit the fact that there's suffering of Palestinians. The matter of where there's a genocide is a function that the courts are busy dealing with, and therefore it would be premature of me, as having fought for the enforcement of the court system even in this country, to make a pronouncement about it ahead of time.
Okay, lastly, why Build One South Africa? Potential voter listening to us, deciding on whether they should consider you. What's your pitch?
They must consider Build One South Africa because on the ballot we're the only party that can bring all South Africans together. Because when you look at the ballot, there are black parties, there are white parties, Indian, coloured. That's not the vision for this country. The vision is to bring South Africa together so that rich and poor can work together to deliver prosperity. And Musi Maimane and Build One South Africa have got credible, ethical leaders who can deliver on that vision and ensure there's a job in every house.
Okay, and we'll see what happens on May 30, whether you'll still remain on the bench or you've come off the bench. Musi Maimane, appreciate your time and thanks for giving it off, and good chatting to you today. And I'm sure we'll have further chats in the build-up to the elections. That's Musi Maimane from the Build One South Africa. Perhaps you may want to tweet him and me and SFM Radio even now, and maybe we'll get a chance to get him to answer some questions even on the X platform as well. But it's 6 o'clock now, time for the news with Greg House.
Thank you again, Ashraf. A boost to the financial sector. Nkumasi residents win case against municipality. Good evening. The Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago says the Corporation for Deposit Insurance Scheme will safeguard bank depositors and bring further confidence and stability to the financial sector. He says it's a means for individuals as well as non-financial corporations to ensure their savings